gotta keep them separated. Gotta keep them separated.
Live from Michigan International Stick on one very, very hot day. Hello and welcome. I'm Paul Page. We've got some great stories for you here on a brand new repaved track. It's gorgeous. But before we go ahead, let's take you back 1 week to the race at Cleveland, because there's still a lot of anger over that one. And as a result of some of the actions in that race, and in fact in the season, there's been some penalties assessed for driving errors throughout the season. Michael Andretti is now on probation for the rest of the season. And for that little stunt after the checkered flag when Robbie Gordon drifted over into Michael, well, he's been fined $10,000 and he's on probation until the end of this season. So that wraps up the race at Cleveland. Now the Michigan 500. This is always a fascinating race. And in fact, there's always some history that goes on here. And we certainly have had that this weekend. On the pole, Firestone tires, first time since right here in 1974. A Honda engine, first time ever. And this gentleman, Parker Johnstone, who has never started on an oval.
What a great day. God has really smiled on us this weekend. I've been with Honda now for 11 years and the Comtech crew for 10. What a great debut for oval racing. I think the fans are going to have a great race. Certainly the drivers are going to have a chess game at 230 miles an hour. What a fantastic event.
Yeah, but what about this heat?
Heat? Well, I tell you, in Central Oregon on the ranch where I live, you dig enough post holes in a day, this is nothing.
All right, Parker Johnstone starts her on the pole. Now, let's take a look at this points fight, because it's really become fascinating. Jacques Villeneuve, of course, has a very long lead in the points over Bobby Rahal. Robbie Gordon won't score any points today because he's not going to race today. But Jacques Villeneuve still is chasing that championship. And right now, Jacques Villeneuve is over with Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, Jacques Villeneuve is the winner of the other 500-mile race. Of course, that one coming at Indy. And, Jacques, the question that begs to be asked is, your win there, how has it affected the way you're going to run this Michigan 500?
Oh, it's going to be very different. First of all, in Indy, we lost 2 laps on that first pit stop when they took it away. So, you know, we had to be pretty aggressive to come back up. Where now we're leading the championship. This is a race where in the past, there's been a lot of engines blown, so it's really important to, you know, take it easy and be there at the end to make what points you can and think about the championship.
Points so very important to this young man. Gary Gerould?
And we're with Michael Andretti. Michael, this has suddenly become a drafting game here in the Michigan 500. Is that going to make this race totally different than the 500 you've run here in the past?
I think it's going to be similar to what we were able to run back in like 1990, 91, where you would see a couple lead changes per lap when the track was a little smoother back then, and I believe it's going to be a lot like that.
Now, you've been handed the probation as the aftermath of the last race last week in Cleveland, and I know you're not happy about that. Will that impact your driving style at all today?
No, I mean, just go out and do what I always do. You know, this place, nobody takes any risks at all. If you do, you're not too smart. So, you know, it's just it's a long race, and you just want to be there at the end. And if you do something, you make a big mistake, it could have cost you.
Thanks, Michael. Paul?
Well, we've already mentioned Robbie Gordon's week has not been great. He's not running here today, and the reason is an accident in practice on Friday. He broke a lower wishbone in the rear suspension of his car, hit the wall at 116 Gs, and the doctor said he can't run here. Yesterday, we talked with him.
Now, you brought along an interesting piece of information here, a note from the neurologist who cared for you at the Jackson Hospital, and according to him, he thinks everything is fine and there should be no restriction placed on you. But I guess in this instance, the IndyCar doctors have the overriding decision.
Well, they do. You know, there's a rule in CART that says if you get knocked out on a race weekend, you're not able to come back and race that weekend, that there's a 7-day minimum. You know, fortunately, we have a weekend off next weekend, and I'll be back at Mid-Ohio.
How much does it hurt your still remaining championship hopes?
It just kills our championship hopes. You know, it's going to be really tough to make up 38 points in 4 races.
In fact, it's so frustrating for Robbie Gordon that he's not even at the track here today. In the center of the front row, they're going to start rows of 3 here today. Teo Fabi. Teo, 1983. You were a rookie pole sitter here. Did you have any advice for Parker Johnstone?
Well, it's maybe the first pole for Parker in an IndyCar, but he's a very experienced driver, so I don't expect any problem at the start of the race.
And what about your effort? The new pavement, the car's been consistent.
The car has been very fast the whole season, but we have to win our first race yet. And I think today we have a good chance because the car is very strong. But it's going to be a very, very fast race. And if you want to win this race, I think you have to run fast from the first lap.
All right, Teo Fabi starts from the center of the front row. Another story here today is that of Jimmy Vasser. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Jimmy Vasser off a win at Portland, and then last week a strong third-place finish. You're starting to be spoken about as a potential winner here in the 500. What are your major concerns?
Well, obviously, you know, making it to the finish, it's a very long and grueling race, and it's very hot today. It's going to be difficult on the car, and making sure my car works good in traffic. I think the guy who has the best car in traffic and dirty air is going to have a good chance of winning today if it makes it to the finish.
Paul, everybody's talking about drafting.
Well, drafting very definitely going to be a factor on this beautifully smooth track here today. Well, the Michigan 500 is coming up, and when we come back, Jack Arute has a very special look at the current points leader, and we've got some other great stories for you. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Michigan International Speedway, where the skies are blue and the weather is hot, 95 degrees. This track is traditionally the fastest of all the tracks on which the Indy cars run. And Bobby, it has recently been repaved, as Paul said, and some of the drivers are calling it as smooth as glass.
Well, it is, Sam, but that equates to 3 to 5 miles an hour around this track. Now, this has caused the officials to want to slow the speed down, so what they did is cut the turbocharger boost from 45 inches down to 40 inches. This was about 75 to 100 horsepower. That's what they've done to slow them.
Well, some people might think that if the engines produce less horsepower, they must necessarily be more reliable. That's not the case.
Well, the reason is they, in order to get back some of this speed, they turn more RPM. They're turning over 14,000 on a couple of these engines, 13 highs, 13s on a lot of them. And so what they're doing for the race in order to make them last 500 miles, they have what we call an overdrive, a bigger split than they normally have. This will let the engines turn less RPM for the long race.
Bobby, what about the heat? Parker Johnstone said it wasn't going to bother him. I don't think.
It's going to bother everybody. It's hot today, 95 degrees hot, but the drivers won't be so bad because they have a lot of air going through the cockpit. The guys that are going to have trouble is the mechanics right down the pit. There's not hardly any air circulating down there. It's like you're in a soak tub down there.
Well, we've got an announcer down there in the pits, Gary Gerald. Gary?
Sam, it is hot, but no matter the heat. When you come to 500-mile races, a special air of anticipation. And remember, the last superspeedway race, Indianapolis, this young man from 2 laps down to get the Indy 500 win, Jacques Villeneuve, getting ready now. He's leading the point standing. This season has been just like a Hollywood script. With more, here's Jack Arute.
Success dreamed of by the child is earned by the young adult. But Jacques Villeneuve denies personal accomplishment. For him, it's a team thing.
Well, I was born in Montreal, near Montreal in Canada. And I grew up in Monaco while my father was alive, following his career. And after that, I grew up in a boarding school in Switzerland. I got into racing because I've always wanted to race. I've always loved speed, risk, being on an edge.
Jacques was only 11 when his father Gilles died in a terrifying crash, but there are memories.
You know, I'm really proud to be his son. He's accomplished a lot in motor racing. He's a legend, basically. I don't know if a young gun is a lack of intimidation.
It may have been an absence of intimidation, personal drive, and self-promotion, which quickly moved him through Formula 3, Atlantics, and into Indy cars.
Every year I went up, it took a little while to adapt to the power, to the speed. But once you adapt to that and you're relaxed inside a race car, it feels like any other type of series. It's only that this one is very competitive. To me, it's not a choice between F1 and IndyCar, it's a choice between teams.
Forget the legacy. How does he pronounce his name?
Jacques Villeneuve.
I got it, I think. Well, when we come back, we'll be ready for the start of the Michigan 500, and we'll take a look at the starting lineup on this very, very hot day. Well, the grandstands are full, the engines are started, and we're very close to the green flag in the Michigan 500. So let's take a look at the starting field. On the pole is Parker Johnstone. In only his 10th start, the rookie qualified nearly 2 miles an hour faster than the field. In the center of the row, Teo Fabi. 2 of his career wins have come on ovals. And on the outside is Michael Andretti. He's the only 2-time winner in today's field. In the second row, Jacques Villeneuve. He won last week at Cleveland. And in the only other 500-mile race this year, at Indy. The center is Jimmy Vasser, the Portland winner, making his second start here at Michigan. Outside is Mauricio Guzman, Big Mo. He was leading at the halfway point at the Indy 500. In row 3, it's Brian Herta coming off a career-best second-place finish last week at Cleveland. Paul Tracy is in the center of the third row. One of his 2 wins this year came on the oval at Milwaukee. Outside is Danny Sullivan, the winner here in 1988. In the fourth row, Andre Ribeiro. He's running the same Honda engine that sits on the pole. In the center is Adrian Fernandez, who has scored points in the last 6 races in a row. And outside is Scott Pruitt. The last win for Firestone Tires came here in 1974, and Pruitt's racing on him. In row 5, Al Unser Jr., the winner of the fastest 500-mile race ever here in 1990. In the center is Raul Boesel and Gilles de Ferran. In row 6, Bobby Rahal, Emerson Fittipaldi, who scored his first IndyCar victory here 10 years ago, and outside is Eddie Cheever. In the 7th row, Carlos Guerrero, Buddy Lazier, and Stefan Johansson. In row 8, Lynn St. James, away from her announcer duties, back behind the wheel. Eliseo Salazar is in the center of the row, and outside is Alessandro Zampedri. In the 9th row, 2 cars, Christian Fittipaldi and Hiro Matsushita. We already mentioned to you that Robbie Gordon's car has been withdrawn. He will not start here today. So on the line, 250 laps, 5 miles, a 2-mile high bank speedway. Fuel stops come about every 34 laps or so. And in the Nations Cup battle, the United States continues to dominate over Canada and Brazil. And that one will go down to the end of the year, no question about that. In today's field, mostly Renards. There's the engines and the tires. And in the Manufacturers' Championship now, Ford Cosworth still pulling ahead of Mercedes-Benz. Now the crowd on their feet, waving them on. Let's go pit side before the start in Jackaroo.
Well, Paul, just about 4 hours ago, Rick Mears, the multi-500-mile champion who has since retired from IndyCar competition, moseyed over to Parker Johnstone's pit area and had a half-hour conversation with Parker Johnstone. The whole conversation centered upon 2 things: how to start this race and how to stay out of trouble. Afterwards, Parker Johnstone said, "I believe I've got exactly the advice that I need." Gary?
We're in Parker Johnstone's pit, and the crew has just learned from engineers who monitor track temperatures 138 degrees as we await the start of this race. That's the surface temperature of this 2-mile oval. We've talked about the stresses, the loads on the suspension in these cars in the past. The bumps are gone. It's going to be sensational racing, but it is so very, very hot. You wonder what toll that may take on equipment and driver before this afternoon is over.
And right there is just the perfect picture to show you how beautifully smooth this repaved track is. The drivers say it's like glass, as Bobby Unser suggested, and that could make for one incredibly fast race. The fastest 500 ever was run here. Will it be faster here today? Take a look at a couple of the onboards we've got for you. This is for Michael Andretti. He'll start outside the front row. Paul Tracy is a bit back in the field in 8th starting position. And Bobby Rahal, of course, we have that camera mounted right on the nose of his car, starts back in 16th position. And Stefan Johansson a little further back in 21st. Again, the camera is right there on the nose of the car. Brian Herta's car. Now we've got a good set of cameras on his car as well. And then Scott Pruitt. So plenty of onboard cameras to show you here today. Should make for one exciting afternoon. Remember, the onboard cameras last year captured the tire exploding on Robbie Gordon's car live right as it was happening. Those onboard cameras are terrific. Look at the crowd, just gigantic here today. In the pits, the teams are all ready as they are now on the pace lap. And Bobby, the heat here today, heard it mentioned several times, It'll affect the drivers, but it'll affect those machines much, much more. What about the tires with that surface temperature?
Paul, that's what I was just poking you for. I wanted to tell you the tires are going to take the most views of everything today other than the guys in the pit. The tires, remember, it's the sun shining on the track. That's what causes the top surface to get really hot, and that's the part that affects the tires.
All right, it's rows of 3 here for the Michigan 500. Pole sitter, rookie, first time on an oval, Parker Johnstone. Awesome responsibility, but he is a veteran racer, and everyone seems to have good confidence in him. The pace picks up as they come off of turn 4. We watch for the green flag. Parker lags back just a bit, and it's a non-start. They'll start counting laps. But what they're really looking for is to see the pole sitter cross the line first, and Jacques Villeneuve looked like he was cruising right up there.
Yeah, Villeneuve was sneaking up on that. Now, they'll only let him do this the next time. If he does that again, they'll just put him to the back of the pack. So they'll be watching for that. Wally Dallenbach, that's not too far from us here, looking at the same thing we are.
Jim Swintal, the starter for the Indy cars, very conscientious about those starts. Has a long conversation with the front row, tells them where he will most likely go green and what he would like to see the alignment. And one thing is he always wants to see that pole car head for the line first.
Another thing to realize is it's not important who leads the first turn of the first lap of this. This really is a long race at 500 miles.
All right, off the 4th turn again. Will they start him this time? Still straggled a bit, but at least Parker Johnstone is out in front. But
no,
says, nope, not gonna do it like that.
What was Fabi doing down there?
Well, Sam, that was that Johnstone just really jumped it. Now I thought maybe he hadn't done right before. Remember, this is the first time that he's ever been on an oval or on the pole.
But why Bobby did Fabi, and you'll see it here.
Because he was way ahead of him. And why not get behind? If they do throw the green, he needs to pick up a draft so he can stay with him so the other guys don't pass him, you see?
Now remember, because of fuel, these laps under the yellow do in fact count. So if we get green this time, it'll actually be at the conclusion of the 2nd lap. I'm not so sure, Bobby, you can really hang that on Parker when other guys are maneuvering quite the way they are. Here we come. Turn number 4, the move again. Front row kind of a line, and again Teo Fabi drops down, but this time it's going to go green. And here we go, 4, 5 wide into the first turn. Parker Johnstone leads them through 1. Teo Fabi runs up high. Michael Andretti drops into 3rd. Villeneuve 4th. Jimmy Vasser is 5th. They're still spread out fairly wide coming onto the backstretch.
Remember, there goes Fabi down the inside trying Parker Johnstone. Remember that most of the practice laps here have been done with the cars running by themselves. This is the first time they've been bunched together, Paul.
Coming for the line, Parker Johnstone leads the first lap of racing. He'll be scored with 3 laps into the record book. Teo Fabi in 2nd place, then Michael, then Jacques Villeneuve, then Jimmy Vasser. Mauricio Gugelmin is 6th, followed by Paul Tracy, Brian Herter, Andrew Ribeiro, and Danny Sullivan.
Now, the important thing for all of these guys, what they're doing right now is trying to see what will win. They've never had this many cars, as you mentioned, on the track at one time. So they're trying to see how the drafting and how the guys alongside them are affecting their race cars.
Right now, there is no prevailing breeze. You can see the trees at the top of the screen. Everything is dead calm.
Jimmy Vasser runs in 5th place, chasing Jacques Villeneuve. They've strung out as they all start to look for racing room. And I think Bobby trying to find out what kind of grooves are available out there.
Yes, and they're going to find out that this track, being all new, the groove is wherever you want it to be. As we saw in the IROC race yesterday, you can just run on the bottom or you can run on the top. And that's what these guys are going to figure out by the time they run 500 miles. As we saw Parker Johnstone a little while ago, he was absolutely right down on the white line and still was leading.
Looking back now to the battle, 4th, 5th, and 6th. Villeneuve, Vasser, Paul Tracy. Tracy closing up on Vasser.
You see Villeneuve there in the blue car just coming by. It's not unusual for him not to lead. Remember, he has a commanding lead in the championship, but he rarely leads the races from the beginning. He has a very cautious approach to the first laps.
Paul Tracy on the charge, closing on Jimmy Vasser.
It's amazing, Paul. I talked to a lot of the drivers the last couple of days and the team owners, and they realize that often there are not very many cars finished.
Whoa, car into the wall. That's Carlos Guerrero. So we're yellow. By the way, Eliseo Salazar jumped up 5 positions in the first couple of laps.
And by the way, look at the extent of the damage. This track, when it strikes big. That car's torn up bad.
Keeping an eye on Guerrero to make sure he is all right as well. Fairly still in the cockpit as Parker Johnstone slows down and comes by. The IndyCar safety crews are already there, each a specialist in either extrication or medical or fire.
Now, he obviously went into the turn backwards. Somehow or another, there was a spin. You can see that's the left side. Took all the brunt of the damage. The tire and the wheel suspension. That piece on the right is the right rear hub assembly. The uprights and all of that together, separated from the wheel.
And he's okay. There's some good, well, he's at least capable of climbing out.
Which Robbie Gordon 2 days ago was not, so it's good to see movement.
So as Carlos Guerrero steps over the debris of his wrecked race car, one Lola is junk right now, and we have our first racing yellow of the day on lap 6. Still under yellow at Michigan, floating overhead, one of America's most enduring corporate symbols, the Goodyear blimp. The Spirit of Akron is providing us with an aerial view of the track and the surrounding Irish Hills of Michigan, a truly beautiful area. The yellow is out because of the accident involving Carlos Guerrero. He climbed out of the car. We'll update his condition here shortly. PPG, the major sponsor of the IndyCar World Series, prominently displays its pace car team at each race. Its fleet of 30 cars are used beyond just entertainment.
Well, the pace car team is made up of 14 professional female drivers who race in other circuits, and they drive our special PPG pace cars, of which there are about 30 in the fleet right now. The pace car program was designed basically for 3 reasons. First of all, to help the OEM manufacturers showcase their new models and hopefully build sales of those models in the showrooms. Secondly, PPG uses it to showcase new colors that may be 3 and 4 years out and see what the public's acceptance of those new colors are. And also, we use the actual paint on the cars themselves for durability tests. We look at the stone chips and bruises and sun exposure, that sort of thing. And then finally, we use the cars for customer entertainment. If you're a PPG customer, you get to go on a pace car ride, which is something the typical race fan doesn't get to do.
PPG and the PPG pace car, Johnny Rutherford at the wheel, a long-term sponsor of the Indy cars. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC stations. You ride under the yellow flag on the nose of Stefan Johansson's car. Tonight on ABC, it's an hour of America's Funniest Home Videos, followed by Lois and Clark, and then Rebecca De Mornay, Jill Eikenberry, Jason Robards, and Peter Gallagher star in an ABC miniseries event, An Inconvenient Woman. All tonight here on ABC. So still yellow here, so we've got some time. Let's go down to Gary Gerald.
Paul, you mentioned at the head of the show there was a very serious incident involving Robbie Gordon on Friday in practice when a failure in a suspension part in the left rear sent him into the wall. A tremendous hit left him unconscious for several minutes. He, of course, out of the hospital doing well. But because of that accident, it was determined that it was a failure of a part in the suspension. It was on a Reynard chassis, and so Bruce Ashmore and the designers at Reynard immediately tried to make a fix. This is the lower wishbone. This is the piece that was in question. It takes a tremendous stress here at 230-mile-per-hour speeds on these banks. They cut this piece out. They had a local manufacturer then make this bushing and this top piece here that is 90-ton steel as opposed to 50-ton steel that was used before. Greatly strengthened it. And as you can see, there are threads here. Instead of it being welded in, they now bolt this into this particular bushing, weld the bushing to a tube that runs all the way down with spot welds all the way down through this particular arm. It's on the lower left, and you say, why does it absorb all of the tension and the stress when the car leans to the right? Well, as it leans to the right, it pulls on that left side. And at these tremendous downforce and tremendous speeds, you have all of this stress. It led to the failure. It was a high mileage part. It had 1,700 miles. So they made the fix. A couple of the drivers have that in their cars today. Other people have entirely new pieces trying to preclude what happened to Robbie Gordon. Jack?
Gary, let's try while we've got the luxury of some time for IndyCar Engineering for Dummies. Now, here's an Indy car without any of its rear wings or front wings. You see the large tires up front here. Well, these large tires, they create an excessive amount of drag. Believe it or not, the drag coefficient on many of the American passenger cars is far less than what is on an Indy car. So now when you're hurtling at speeds of over 220 miles an hour, engineers have to try and adjust the downforce on the car. The more downforce that's created by the front wings and the rear wings, the more drag that it's created and the less speed that you're able to get for the amount of horsepower you have. So what engineers do is they run a knife edge balance. They try to take as much downforce out of the car before a driver can no longer drive it. Why? Because they want the top speed. So when you hear a driver talking about his car being balanced, that means for that particular track, he's got it exactly the way he wants it. The coefficient between downforce and speed is exactly perfect, Paul.
So, with rain tires, no wing, and no nose. Now, I don't think I'd drive that car. They're still trying to clean this track up. We're under yellow after Carlos Guerrero's accident, and we'll be back. Back with just about one lap to go before we go back to green flag racing. Parker Johnstone leading an IndyCar race for the first time in his career has now led 15 laps, and good moves. Salazar from 23rd to 20th, Eddie Cheever from 18th to 15th, Paul Tracy from 8th up to 6th, and Andre Ribeiro from 10th up to 8th. So in those first couple of laps of speed, we have seen some action. Now, one thing we're going to be able to do is listen in on the two-way communication with Scott Pruitt. You'll be hearing the voices of Scott Pruitt and perhaps a little clearer that of Jim McGee, the team manager for Patrick Racing.
12 o'clock in the fuel, Scott, 12 o'clock.
That was the voice of McGee. And there is Scott Pruitt on the track. He currently runs 11th. Bobby?
I didn't hear that good enough to get that. It's 12 o'clock. I don't know what he meant.
That's the adjustment of the fuel dial. It's probably adjusted straight up.
All right, we're ready to go green once again.
Green.
And that's how they tell. In case they're not looking ahead, Parker Johnstone takes the lead, but take a look at Teo Fabi as he now begins to close in. He's going to try a low move on Parker. Parker comes across the front and pulls away.
And yeah, what I just wanted to tell you that what it means, the reason they say green, 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 because on a restart, as soon as it goes green, I don't care if they're on the back straightaway, they can start passing, and that's really important.
Boy, take a look at Michael, who's on the fly as he just screams past Teo Fabi and picks up second place.
3 different engines, the Honda engine of Parker Johnstone out front, but you just saw the power of the new Ford Cosworth engine in Michael's car breeze by the more normal engine on Fabi's.
Back on Paul Tracy's car right now. He runs 6th, but he begins to challenge Jimmy Vasser just ahead. That blue car, that's Jack Villeneuve.
And let's keep in mind, these cars are like flywheels. It takes a while to get the speed up, and that's the reason you see a passing sometimes.
Oh, look at this. The Honda power of Andre Ribeiro really paying off on the backstretch.
Talk about
it. Just cuts right on past Paul Tracy.
Talk about a difference in engine power. Both Hondas are really moving. Here comes Ribeiro setting up another Ford engine. The Ford engine in Vasser's car. Watch him.
Fernandez, Pruitt, and Al Unser Jr. were all able to get past Herta on the restart, and that brings them up into the top 10. Fernandez still on the move there. Back to the fight, Jimmy Vasser, Andre Ribeiro. Fight for 6th place, Bobby.
The Honda will no doubt have more power than the Fords do. It's been running that and showing that here. But it's not passing as easy. You have to remember, it's a flywheel thing here. In order for everybody to get equal like they are now, it takes about 2 to 3 laps to get this flywheel going in full swing. And it's because they have less boost, less horsepower. The aerodynamics are really what's working more on these cars than the horsepower is.
Looking back at Scott Pruitt as he tries to do everything he can to get up into the front and into this fight.
You can see how wide the grooves are. You know, they don't, everybody was talking about when they first got here that the new track, new pavement rather on it, it was going to be a 1-groove track. Well, already you can see we've seen 3 grooves wide already with almost 25 cars doing it. You can see Scott right now, he's all over the place.
Pruitt working on the Gallus driver, Adrian Fernandez.
Just put yourself for a second in Pruitt's place. The tension, I mean, things seem to be happening in slow motion. Remember, they're going 230 miles an hour. Anything that goes wrong at this speed could be catastrophic.
We'll ride with Scott Pruitt. He is 10th. He makes the move on Adrian Fernandez.
Now what happens there is Adrian was running low, thinking that he was going to block Scott. This racetrack, because of the grooves being so wide. There's
Jacques Villeneuve comes off and into the pits.
That's unscheduled, Paul.
Oh, absolutely. 22 laps into the book. This could mean trouble for the points leader.
And he's going too slow. He's got some sort of a problem. He's going way too slow coming in.
Green team is right there, and the IndyCar officials are saying, hold it, we've seen something here.
That's the crew guys saying they found some sort of a problem right there with his hand in the air.
Something in the right rear. Suspension, we're talking to Renard. A wheel bearing, what could this possibly be? But before you answer that, whatever it is, it may speak once again to the toughness of Michigan.
Well, it's definitely in the right rear. Everybody's seeing something right in the right rear. I can see smoke coming back there a little bit too, Paul, so he's probably got a bearing in the upright that's gone.
That would be only his second breakdown in the last 9 races.
Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, we're showing you the rear hub that they're going to pull out and put on the right side of the car, Paul. So definitely this is going to be a long stop for your point leader.
Now there's the upright right there. That's what Jack's referring to as the hub. Now most likely the part that's gone bad is the bearings inside to keep the whole thing to go together.
And Jack Arute, any idea, Jack, on the hub, what might be the problem? Wheel bearing, a connection, what is it?
Well, right now, Paul, they're really not going to discern what the problem is. It's easier just to change it and get them back out there.
The reason, of course, they'll put this work in is this race is notorious as being one where people break down. You could spend 10, 15 laps in the pits right now and still finish in the first 5 at the end of this day.
Another thing you have to worry about, Sam and Paul and Jack, is when they put those things back on, they don't get aligned as good as they were when he started the race.
All right, Michael Andretti, who is 3rd, but he's dropped way back. Listen to that engine. What is that?
A little bit of back off. He backed off just for a minute there, or he could have popped a gear shifter. Remember, they told you they have 2 gears that they race with. One of them to get rolling with that they'll use certainly after the restart, and the other one is what they call the cruise gear, like the overdrive in a car.
Well, I buy the gear change, Bobby, because I don't think he'd have backed off at that point on the track.
Yeah, but look at this. Michael comes off the corner low. That's Paul Tracy closing in on him. And Michael, for the most part, just lets Tracy cruise on past. Are we going to see Michael Andretti in the pits shortly? He's staying out right now.
Here comes Ribeiro there. He's shooting right by him, no effort.
Oh, whatever it is a problem now, no question about it. Look at the difference in his fastest lap at 224 and his last lap at 208.
Yeah, he'll be in pretty quick. He's got a bad problem. He could even have a broken header on it, too.
This team has complained about these new Ford engines, and it looks like one may be letting him down now.
What about Michael, Gary Gerald?
On the radio, he's telling the crew, Paul, that it's something to do with the engine. He says it's very much like what happened at Cleveland. Remember, in the last 12, 13 laps at Cleveland, they traced that after the event to an ignition problem. Michael thinks it's the same. They're waving him into position as he's on pit road.
So on lap 28, Michael Andretti brings an ailing engine into the pits. The team, most notably in the person of Paul Tracy, has been concerned about their Ford engines thus far. And this may be further evidence of that concern. He shut her down. The cowling comes off. It's going to be a long stop for Michael. Parker Johnstone is still the leader, followed by Teo Fabi. And with Michael's turn into the pits, Paul Tracy picks up 3rd, followed by Ribeiro, and then Jimmy Vasser in 5th. This is our best fight on the track, as Ribeiro is trying to close Paul Tracy.
And Ribeiro so far has been the fastest moving of the guys in the middle part of the pack. Look at him suck up behind Paul Tracy right there.
But he obviously doesn't have the handling. As soon as he gets to turn, he backs off a little bit. Handling, you got to remember, this track is almost all turns. Handling is very important. Of course, horsepower is. But horsepower only does you good if you have the handling to go along with it.
We'll keep watching as Ribeiro moves to the inside of Paul Tracy. They're side by side through the first corners, but Tracy gets a little better run off the corner. Still, Will he be able to hold it down the backstretch as Ribeiro begins to use that draft? Darts out, darts to the inside, and Ribeiro is around Tracy. That puts him into third place. Gary Gerould, any more on Michael? Gary Gerould, any more information on Michael Andretti?
Indeed, they've taken and changed all the electronic components that they can, and they will try to fire the engine and get him back out. The engine just now coming to life. The wheels are moving. We'll see if this works. It engages, stutters, and slowly he gets away.
So Michael Andretti sputtering back into the action. The same time Al Unser Jr., who started 13th, is now running 8th. And Michael tries to get her back up to speed. Hopefully they have whatever problem he has fixed. And Parker Johnstone is still the leader. Michigan, and Al Unser Jr. is on the fly. He's been carving his way up through this field and now is battling Big Mo, Mauricio Guzman, for 6th. Not much of a battle. He dispatches him just that quickly and now will set his sights on Jimmy Vasser, who runs ahead about 200 yards. Jacques Villeneuve is already back into the fight after they've done the work on his car, but he has fallen well back in the order. We'll try to give you an update on how many laps behind. And Guzman, who had a good battle going for a while with Paul Tracy, just got really sucked under by Al Unser Jr. when he came up and got Tracy, and then got by Pruitt, then got by Guzman. So now it is Scott Pruitt and Mauricio Guzman that battle, but Guzman comes off the corner low.
They have been running side by side like this for several laps. Bobby, I'm glad that the boost was cut back and the speeds cut back a little bit. This seems awful fast as it is. It could have been another 5 to 8 miles an hour faster without those horsepower restrictions.
Everything is pretty much the same, Sam, except that it takes them a while to get up to speed. That same old flywheel effect. A heavy flywheel takes a long time to get turning.
Look at Guzman fall back suddenly.
It's going pretty good.
Guzman fell back suddenly behind Pruitt.
Parker Johnstone is still the leader. We've had one incident today. Carlos Guerrero, he's now with Gary Gerould.
Carlos, can you tell us what happened in that situation that ended up with such a heavy impact on the wall?
Well, yeah, the Erdős car was all weekend with understeering. I don't know what happened, but this morning is still the same. And at the race, the car was with oversteering, completely different that was this morning and all weekend. So I start moving my bars to try to find the correct setup of the car. And I ride to turn number 3 and I lost the car.
We're happy that you're all right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Scott Pruitt chases Al Unser Jr. Continuing battle for 6th place.
Now this is pretty much of a race right here that we can kind of look at between engines. Both of these cars look like they handle about the same. Little Al in the front car there is the Mercedes, and Scott Pruitt is in a Ford. Let's watch this one.
We'll listen to Scott Pruitt. So in a fight like this, I doubt he's on the radio too much at all. Eddie Cheever driving for A.J. Foyt, who has not been quite as racy since that first lap accident at Indianapolis. Looking pretty good here today. Started 18th, now runs in 10th.
You can see little Al on the left, Scott behind him. Now Scott's picking up a draft, Paul. Not a whole lot of draft, just so everybody knows, because these cars have to get a little bit closer than that to get a big draft.
You ride with Scott Pruitt. Started 12th, now in 7th, chasing Al Unser Jr. Battle for second.
The race. He's about 7
As
seconds
Andrew
behind
Ribeiro
us.
overhauls Teo Fabi and moves into second.
That
They're
makes
also moving
Honda's
through lap traffic right now.
That makes Honda's 1-2 in this race at this point, and also Firestone Tires 1-2 over Goodyear. Goodyear has this enormous winning streak of over 300 consecutive races. I don't think they've been menaced like this in 20 years.
Sam, I think what we're seeing here is a horsepower difference and not the tire differences. I think these tires have been pretty evenly matched.
Oh,
Firestone and Goodyear.
Oh, I agree with that. I just mean as far as the outcome of the race. Yeah, the Honda is just giving those.
Paul Tracy grabs off 3rd place. Puts Teo Fabi back to 4th. And And speaking of Teo Fabi, let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, the Combustion Engineering team wants to try and make this a 5-stop race, and the way they're going to do that is try and make their first stop no sooner than lap 50. So they're down low on fuel, but they're going to try and run it 6 more laps and then look for Teo Fabi to come on the pit road.
And we're on lap 44 of 250 right now. We should see many of the teams beginning to lay out equipment for a stop any time now. Fastest lap of the race thus far was just turned by Parker Johnstone at 230.6 miles an hour.
That's not a lot with a draft, too. Remember, all this air moving around makes like a big whirlpool. It really helps them in speed. Another thing to remember is nobody, meaning the mechanics, don't know what the fuel mileage is going to be at 40 inches of manifold pressure. So here comes, looks like Johnstone right into the pits right now. So they don't really know what their fuel mileage is, so right now it's going to be interesting.
The leader of the race, Parker Johnstone, he's led the first 45 laps. He relinquishes now, Gary.
Oh, Paulie slides through. They've blown the stop for the moment. We were afraid of that. From 230 miles an hour down to 90, it's slippery on the concrete. He slid through. They roll him back, and now the hoses are in place, and the tire changing process begins. But this is just a real tough stop. Remember, as you pointed out, this is his first time ever on an oval race. First time for this crew to work under these conditions. They were poised. They got him back. He's refueled, and he's underway. Let's go to Jack.
Well, Gary, now Andre Ribeiro will make his presence known on pit road, and we almost have a crash here between Adrian Fernandez and Parker Johnstone as they come by Ribeiro's pit. The team is set waiting for Andre to come in, and it looks as if as well we're going to see if possibly Teo Fabi will come in. No, Fabi looks like he will stay out, so it's all going to be Ribeiro on pit road. Going down very slowly. The speed limit is only 90 miles an hour. The Honda team will go to work.
Remember, it is very tough to get from that new pavement onto the concrete there without having problems. They've had problems all through practice with that. We saw cars spinning as they left the pits in practice.
So Andre Ribeiro,
but Sam, remember, the one thing that Andre Ribeiro has going for him that Parker Johnstone didn't is the fact that he was able to do this in the Indy 500 as well. Go from blacktop to concrete.
Right.
Lead swaps regularly now. Picked up by Ribeiro, then by Teo Fabi. Paul Tracy is in the pits now, as most of the teams making their stops. Not yet stopping, of course, though, is Teo Fabi. Jimmy Vasser and Scott Pruitt are staying out as well. So is Mauricio Gugelmin, trying to milk every mile they can out of those fuel tanks.
And the idea, Paul, is they need a yellow. If they got a yellow, they would pick up roughly about a lap advantage on all the guys that are pitted now. They're looking for Lady Luck to help them, and that's a good reason to stay out.
Mauricio Gugelmin from 4th place finally heads in. Teo Fabi from the lead. And here he is, Jack.
And Teo Fabi, the crew will go to work. Now let's watch and see, besides changing the tires and taking on the fuel, as you watch this pit stop, make sure to see that the crewmen, especially on the front, don't go towards the nose. One crewman tries to take debris out of the radiator. No changes on the car suspension-wise in 12.3 seconds.
And Jack, A.J. Foyt's playing with the tactics here. He's kept Eddie Cheever out, and Cheever picks up the lead. Remember, he nearly won the race at Nazareth on a good fuel strategy that went wrong only when he didn't get a full tank of fuel on the very last stop. There's Parker Johnstone, all these stops made under the green as he comes back up to speed. And as soon as the stops are complete, we'll reset the order for you. Cheever leads it. Brian Herta has not stopped either. He is in 2nd place. 50 laps are complete. Cheever comes in. We expect Herta shortly, and then Parker Johnstone will pick up the lead once again. But in 2nd place will now be Christian Fittipaldi, at least for the moment, who stopped on the 37th lap. Now here's that situation with Parker Johnstone. And he just slid past his pit and over the hose. And Bobby, I would think that that's a violation, is it not?
I've been waiting for the black flag to come up from Wally Dallenbeck, because running over a hose brings out a stop-and-go penalty. And there's a really close wreck between Fernandez and Johnstone right there. That really got close, causing Adrian to go back around.
And that's what they're going to do with Parker. It's going to be a black flag for Parker Johnstone. Brian Herta stalled his car.
you got to figure it's Johnstone's first stop. First pit stop ever in his life. He comes in, he doesn't know what the speed is like. They've been running 230 miles an hour.
Well, Paul, Brian Herta had a near miss and one full miss. First, he slid very similar to Parker Johnstone as he come into the pits. When they had completed their work, the crew started to set him down. He stalled the motor. They got it restarted, and he almost stalled it again. Some of these drivers are having a great deal of difficulty getting traction off the concrete.
You know, one of the reasons for that, the concrete is still fairly new, and it's a little bit rough on the top.
Now a correction. They've not called for a black flag on Parker Johnstone. They have called for one on Buddy Lazier. And we'll try and sort those two reports out for you and find out what the plans are. There is Parker's pit. The IndyCar officials there, Billy Camphausen there on the left. Traxon is in charge of that area of the pits. Gary Gerald, the Penske cars have both been in.
Before we address that, Paul, a quick word from Doug Peterson of Comtech on Parker Johnstone. What was the ruling they just gave you, the IndyCar official, on running over that hose?
Yeah, they said because only the front wheels went over the hose, there's no penalty.
So you dodged a big bullet right there.
Yeah, we sure did. He just misjudged on the carbon brakes. They were cold, and the car didn't stop.
Okay, thank you. Now, regarding the Penske team, there was a problem for both Al Unser Jr. and Emerson Fittipaldi. Jr., the jacks retracted. They had to send them down a second time. He was held an extra couple of seconds, a problem with an air gun, and there was a problem with a wheel wrench also for Emerson Fittipaldi that lengthened his stop just a bit. Both men did get away cleanly and are on the circuit now.
So Parker Johnstone has the lead once again. In second place is Christian Fittipaldi, due to stop any time now. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC station. Well, a lot has happened in the past few minutes. Parker Johnstone had a display of smoke at the back of the car. May have serious engine problems. He's in the pits. Raul Boesel, the same sort of situation. Andre Ribeiro picks up the lead. Let's go down to Gary Gerald.
Paul, as it turns out, it's not an engine problem for the Honda driven by Parker Johnstone. It's the upright on the right rear. It could be a wheel bearing, it could be a CV joint, but it's definitely in the upright. And just as Team Green did with Jacques Villeneuve, they are now changing, the Comtech team is changing the upright on the right rear for Parker Johnstone. Meanwhile, he sits under an umbrella trying to stay cool while his team works on that very hot suspension part. Let's go to Jack.
Well, Gary, one man that won't complete the 500 miles is Michael Andretti. And Michael, you were real strong, had a lot of horsepower, looked like, and then it went away, not all at once, but little by little.
Yeah, something started to develop a miss in the engine, and you know, it got worse and worse to the point where I couldn't really stay out there. So I came in, they tried to replace everything, and went back out, and it still was missing. So we're done.
A lot of talk about 1996, especially with the performance in Indy and then the performance here again by the Honda engines. Could there possibly be Honda power in the future for Newman Haas Racing?
I don't know what's going to happen there right now, but you know, the Hondas, they've done a good job, and really showed this weekend.
Well, it's tough to see out.
Certainly showing right here, Andre Ribeiro in front. By the way, Gil de Ferran also came into the pits. They have the cowling off of his car now, and Ribeiro leads for the first time in his IndyCar career. Second is Tracy, third is Teo Fabi, then Scott Pruitt and Mauricio Gugelmin.
Ribeiro's domination suddenly in this 500-mile race, Paul, doesn't it remind you of the way the last 500-mile race almost ended with Scott Goodyear running for the same team with the same mechanical setup as Ribeiro has now, almost winning that race?
I think the main thing we got to start watching for today, we've seen too many of these right rear upright bearings going bad, and that's what everybody else, now all the mechanics and the team leaders up and down pit row are talking to each other and figuring this stuff out. So they're going to be checking their cars and telling their drivers on the radios, if you feel something weird on the right rear, come in and let's check it, because that's a very dangerous thing. If that bearing seizes up, something breaks back there, it's a guaranteed wreck if they're still up to speed.
And now they've indicated Raul Boesel is retired with an engine problem. Scott Pruitt, he started in 12th, now runs in 3rd. Here is Brian Herta, who runs 13th now. We'll take a lap with him.
Okay.
Now here we are, Brian Herter. Now watch his hands. This shows you how smooth the racetrack is. Right here now, it used to be real rough. Their hands used to take a big step. Coming out of turn 4 here now. Up really close to the wall. Kind of straighten this little dog leg in the front straightaway out. Wide open, never backing off. Remember, with 40 inches of boost, they don't have a lot of pressure. Into turn 1, going right by Penske's new opposite bases. Coming out of turn 2, really close to the wall again, down the back straightaway. Takes a hand off the steering wheel. Very relaxed. Now, he can do that on this new track because it's paid. You didn't do it in the old days or like a year ago. But just watch it. Very easy. His head is leaning over against the right, pulling probably 2.5 or 3 G's in the turns. Down the front straightaway again, right by the start-finish line there. Easy on the steering wheel, not a bit of problem. Takes no pressure to turn that steering wheel right now.
Then Gil de Ferran, where we told you he was in the pits. There's Jim Hall. Gary Gerould.
Yes, indeed. De Ferran having a problem with the electronics. That was, of course, what brought Michael Andretti in initially. Like the Newman Haas team, Jim Hall's team changed the electronic components, set him back out. We understand, however, from the crew, it is still not functioning the way they would expect it or want it to. So problems continue for Gil de Ferran.
And as a matter of fact, while he runs down the backstretch with a cluster of other cars, right behind him is the leader of the race, Andre Ribeiro, who closes up behind him and is being quite careful in the pass. Saturday on ABC Sports, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway rolls out the red carpet for the stars of stock car racing. Defending champion and NASCAR points leader Jeff Gordon battles a field of the world's finest at the Brickyard 400 live. And then on ABC's Wide World of Sports, Dale Earnhardt and the world's top drivers battle in identical cars in the International Race of Champions. Plus, we begin coverage of the World Track and Field Championship from Gothenburg, Sweden. That's all Saturday here on ABC Sports. Al Unser Jr., by the way, has pulled up into 4th place now. So it's Ribeiro, Tracy, Pruitt, Unser Jr., and Teo Fabi, the top 5.
This is Ribeiro's best race by far this year. His finishing positions have been littered with positions in the teens, except for Elkhart Lake, where he finished 4th. He has never led convincingly like this.
Pruitt at the back of Tracy, battle for 2nd. And there goes Scott Pruitt as Tracy gets a little bottled up behind Gil de Ferran. And Tracy doesn't seem to be able to respond to that challenge readily.
Remember how Pruitt and de Ferran came together in the last laps of the race at Cleveland last week, putting de Ferran, who was leading the race at the time, out.
Raul Boesel out of the race. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Raul, you want to go 500 miles. Did the power plant just give up in this heat today? What happened?
No, I'm an early spectator today, but my Duracell Lola was running fine. We even paced ourselves because we knew it would be a lot of mechanical problems this race, and you know, it just gave up too early.
How about the heat and the actual conditions on this new surface here?
No, everything's fine. It's not too bad. It's hot, but you know, the smoothness of the track make much easier this year.
We're sorry you're out. Thank you.
Thank you.
From time to time here, you'll see the number 12 car of Jimmy Vasser. He had a 39-second stop. He had trouble with his right rear as well. And he is running in 11th, trying to get back on the leader lap.
It's obvious that this track imposes. You see the battle for 3rd. Now it's little Al Unser on the right there. He has come up so far from his grid position and now is threatening Paul Tracy. But it's obvious that this track imposes incredible loads on the suspension.
Another thing, when a guy is drafting like little Al, boy, look at him coming up big time.
Boy, that was a draft.
Really got to run. I'm just starting to say, the drafting is free. Boy, you can get a tow better than getting with a tow car helping you out. Just really get a big suction.
So Unser Jr. up to third place. Jack Arute, Penske's looking strong here.
And Paul, his performance, that of Al Jr., may have been preceded by his lack of performance in Indianapolis. Let's go all the way back to the Memorial Day Classic. Remember, Little Al was the only driver of the two between he and Fittipaldi to try and stick with the Penske. The reason he said after the race is, I wanted to get that car in the field because it may be slow, but in race conditions, as he goes by Scott Pruitt, in race conditions it drives like a Cadillac. It's just a breeze to drive. He doesn't qualify well, but he wanted a car that could go 500 miles in comfort. And in the heat, and the humidity, and the pressure of today, it seems to be paying off for Team Penske.
Al Unser Jr. around Scott Pruitt into second place and just puts his teammate Emerson Fittipaldi, who's running 12th, 1 lap down. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
In the Derek Walker pit, of course, no Robbie Gordon today, so that puts it on the shoulders of the rookie who was second in the Indy 500, Christian Fittipaldi. He thought that he had a problem in his first experience here at Michigan. It turned out what he thought might have been a wheel bearing failure at the rear of the car, the wheel balance fell off, and so the car out of balance. He brought it into the pits, tires changed, he's back out there, Paul.
Well, Scott Pruitt running through the field. Bobby, I want to look at his onboard shot.
Look at that
Bobby,
tire.
Look at the front tire. Does that tell us anything?
Well, all that is a little hair growing around it. It really isn't anything wrong. It could possibly be a blister, but it's not likely. The reason you can kind of tell that is Scott hasn't slowed down all that much, and it doesn't seem to be getting any worse. The rubber should start throwing off pretty quick if it was a blister, or if it is, now leak right there, it kind of went away. I think what we'll see is if it's a blister, he'd be in by now.
Well, I love these high-tech explanations. Little hair growing on the tire, says Bobby Unser. Andre Ribeiro leading for the first time in an IndyCar race. Out in front. Al Unser Jr. is second, 78 laps complete.
This Ford Fact is brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealers. Have you driven a Ford lately?
One of the most effective ways for the crew to adjust the handling of an IndyCar on an oval is known as weight jacking. They do so by lifting off this cover, going to the springs, and making an adjustment here on the spring platform, which changes how much weight is distributed to each one of the wheels. Now that change takes too long to make during a pit stop, so teams are experimenting with a weight jacker that the driver can actually use in the cockpit. This particular system uses a pressure accumulator that is filled with hydraulic fluid and pressurized to 2,000 psi. Then as the driver flips a switch in the cockpit, it moves this solenoid, which then sends that hydraulic fluid up to the front of the car to an actual cylinder that for each click in the cockpit moves about 30 thousandths of an inch. That translates to about 10 pounds being transferred or jacked to that wheel. And that makes a significant difference in the handling of the car. And if this system works correctly, through the whole 500-mile race distance, the driver should have a car that handles perfectly.
Second round of stops beginning now as Paul Tracy has made a stop in the pits. Routine under green, in and out. Leader is still Andre Ribeiro, followed by Al Unser Jr. and Scott Pruitt. Goodyear has a formidable presence here at the Michigan International Speedway, not only on the track, but also above the track with the Goodyear blimp Spirit of Akron hovering overhead, providing us with spectacular aerial views. So now we anticipate stops by everyone in the field, save Tracy, who has just made a stop. The question, Jack Arute, I would suggest to you, though, is tire wear.
Well, Paul, we may see the first chink in the armor here in the Teo Fabi pit. They had to pit 5 laps earlier than they had hoped to because of a blistered right rear. It's right behind there. You can see the blisters on the tire there. So the first thing that the tire engineers do when they see a blistering situation is check the black book, check the tire pressures, check what conditions the tire ran under. This should not be a cause for immediate concern, but you can be sure that the tire engineers are huddled over here and they're discussing the situation right now. Also, keep you informed, we've got a report that there may be a tire problem with Scott Pruitt as well, and the leader will be pitting, Andre Ribeiro, in 2 laps.
Problems sometimes are encountered while coming into the pits here because the cars race with these carbon fiber brakes in order to save weight at the brake. They don't heat up quite as easily. They're not as well balanced when you stop. And so sometimes you see them have trouble coming in. Watch
Al Unser Jr. running second, peels off. So does the leader, Andre Ribeiro. So Little Al follows the leader into the pits. And we'll watch both of these cars as they come to their marks simultaneously. Ribeiro closest to you, Al Unser Jr. well down the pits.
Classic racing.
Everything routine for Unser, just waiting for the fuel. Got him rolling in 13.6.
Gary, problems with the Firestone tires on the right front. A blistering problem for Andre Ribeiro. The right front tire has a blister all the way around. So as we suspected, there are tire problems both for Goodyear and Firestone. We can get a shot of it right here. You can see the blistering, not on the right rear, but on the right front. Well, the problem that we have is we have a crewman that was trying to hide it away from us. We got him away. There you go. Just like Goodyear.
The guy shouldn't try to hide it, Jack, because we can see it on television. That's exactly what's happening. And a lot of that is caused from the track. It's very hot today. The sun beats on the track, gets the surface very hot. The tires have not blistered all during practice and qualification. But this is what happens when the temperature goes up. Now, right there, you can see that hair growing around on Pruitt's car, and that's blistering. Now, the tire's not unsafe. If it doesn't get any worse than that, of which we've watched him run for a long time, it's not unsafe, but it does take away a little bit of traction.
And as you can see there, Scott Pruitt moved up from 12th, now runs in the lead, due for a stop any time now. And we'll listen in, see if they're going to call him in.
Got a clean pit, got a clean pit. The speed limit, be careful. Be careful about them locking up the wheels.
That's Jim McGee talking.
Gentlemen, we got the same problem with the right front on Scott Pruitt's car. Blistering on the right front, taking a survey of the right rear as the crew completes their work and taking on the methanol fuel. No problem with the right rear. So it's right fronts for Firestone, right rears for Goodyear.
Paul Tracy suddenly slowing down. Was running in 8th. Heading down into the pits, but remember, he was just there.
Got something wrong because he was too low to be coming into the pit, Paul.
And the leader is now Mauricio Gugelmin, who should stop any time now. But remember, there he is. In fact, he may be dialing for the pits right now. He is. He led the most laps at the Indianapolis 500. Jimmy Vasser will assume the lead. That is assuming he does not come in. If he does not, then Andre Ribeiro is back in the lead, followed by Al Unser Jr. Fittipaldi, Emerson in this case, makes his stop. Pit road still a very busy place on the 92nd laps. Emerson Fittipaldi, this is more than routine. Gary?
Notice at the front of the car, the air jack is broken. They had to manually use the lift to get him up in the air to change the tires, and now he's gone. But that means an extra man has an extra duty, and it takes a little more time.
Gives you an idea, too, of how strong those noses are when you can just stick something under there and lift it up. Andre Ribeiro now with Gugelmin and Vasser both to the pits, picks up the lead once again, followed by Al Unser Jr. 93 laps complete. Jack Arute, Jimmy Vasser's in.
And they're having trouble getting the car into the proper gear. He gets away, but Jimmy Vasser also on board with Goodyear's. He has a blistering problem on the right rear.
You can test all you want, but on these very high-speed tracks, temperature conditions like this and the pressures of racing itself will bring out characteristics that you can't test for.
Also,
sometimes.
Sam, it's the new pavement causes a lot of this. The heat and the new pavement. There's so much traction on this new pavement, it's hard on the tires.
Andre Ribeiro, who has climbed up through this field from 10th, looking good. Parker Johnstone is back in the race, but 31 laps behind this car, the leader, Andre Ribeiro. Back at the Michigan 500, where Andre Ribeiro has just completed 100 of 250 laps as the leader of the race. Saturday on ABC Sports. With a toss of the ball and a swing of the bat, we'll take you to the ballpark on Baseball Night in America. Check your local listings for the game in your area and catch all the regional action on Saturday live at 8 Eastern, 7 Central here on ABC Sports. Emerson Fittipaldi's been given a black flag for pit speed limit. Let's go to Gary Gerould in the Newman Haas pit.
Well, the remaining portion of the Newman Haas team astride the motorcycle, ready to go back and try to cool down. Paul Tracy, this was an engine-related problem?
Yeah, I think we dropped a rod. It shook real hard coming through the middle too. Big disappointment for the Kmart Budweiser team. The car was handling great. we were able to stay with the Hondas, stay with Ribeiro, and just and I was cruising, you know, not turning a lot of revs, running 6th gear. So it's a big disappointment, really. So it's we move on to the next one.
What's going to be the key for whoever wins this race under these conditions?
Well, it's awfully hot, and you know there's still a lot of guys running and just biding your time and waiting it out, and that's what we were trying to do, but we had a motor failure.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks.
Well, Paul Tracy, he's out. Andre Ribeiro is still the leader, followed by Unser Jr. and Scott Pruitt. Here's the stats on the last set of pit stops. And as you can see, the team, the Pac West group, did a nice job for Mauricio Gugelmin. Everybody else in order, but Gugelmin, he picks up a position. After 100 laps, we have had 2 cautions for 12 laps. 5 cars are out of the race. We've had 7 different leaders and 9 lead changes, and the average speed's coming back up. 184, now pushing 185 miles an hour. There's Parker Johnstone back into the fight, 62 miles behind his Honda teammate, Andre Ribeiro. Teammates in the engines, but of course not in teams. Andre Ribeiro drives for Tasman. And we'll take a look now at the relationship from Andre Ribeiro. We look now for Al Unser Jr.
10 seconds and change back.
There he is. So Andre Ribeiro handling up all of the field here at the race.
And Ribeiro is pulling away. He's a young man who studied law for a couple of years. He's very inexperienced on ovals, which makes what's happening all the more extraordinary. In this year so far, he's only scored 2 points on ovals, ranks 20th in IndyCar standings for his oval performances, but this is something else.
Now, Little Al's going to be running in 6th gear, or what I was referring to earlier is the overdrive. I know Roger Penske, I talked to Roger last night, he's not going to let that engine over rev. His main purpose is to finish. He feels that if he does that, that's the only way he's going to have a chance of winning. Honda's for sure outpowering everybody pretty bad.
Ribeiro is trying to pick up drafts where he can. You saw him nip in behind Parker Johnstone, and there again, he obviously is not just cruising by a long shot, and I'm thinking he's using the road, Bobby, in a way you rarely see here. He's all over the track.
He's most likely doing the same thing that Little Al is, running in what their overdrive gear would be, Sam.
Teo Fabi was trying to stay on the leader lap there, couldn't do it. Andre Ribeiro got around him. Jenny Vasser was running 9th, but he's got a problem, Jack?
Well, indeed he does. They took on tires and fuel, but more importantly, Jimmy Vasser had to come in. They're going to have to exchange the battery and what they call the track box. Now that means they have to take the rear deck lid off the car, one of the side pods. The crew will have to put an alternate battery and box in there. This is not the ECM, the electronic management, but more or less what they utilize to control the voltage to the motor itself. So obviously, as smooth as this track is, still the electronics have got a problem.
Boy, the 4th row really paying off here. Ribeiro started 10th. He's first. Al Unser Jr. started 13th. He's second. Scott Pruitt started in 12th, and he is third. Andre Ribeiro continues to lead here. Traffic running just ahead of him. Take a look at his fastest lap versus his fastest lap. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC stations. Back at the Michigan 500, presented by Speed Stick. Nothing has happened while we've been away. Andre Ribeiro is still the leader over Al Unser Jr. He's got 12 seconds on Little Al, and then 6 seconds back is Scott Pruitt. The rest of the top 12, well, they're running several laps down, but remember, that really doesn't matter here at Michigan International Speedway. You can make those laps up in just no time. Parker Johnstone, who's come back into the fight, as we said, and we showed you, well, he just ran the fastest lap thus far at 2:26. He really is on the fly. Running in last place, of course, almost 60 miles behind the lead, but he's going to stay in this fight.
The incredible thing is, as they run right now, there's a Reynard chassis in first, a Penske in second, a Lola in third, and a Honda engine is in first, a Mercedes in second, and a Ford in third. So we have most incredible mix of manufacturers running out front right now.
Eliseo Salazar, who started 23rd, now running 7th, so he's coming up through the field.
Keep in mind, Paul, the fastest lap of the race has been 229 miles an hour. Qualification fastest lap was 230 miles an hour.
All right, let's go to the pits. Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, we checked with the tire engineers as to what changes might we look for in the next series of pit stops to resolve the blistering problems. Remember, they're indiscriminate. They both obstruct Goodyear and Firestone. Both sets of engineers said they think they can cure them by changing the tire pressures and making minor wing adjustments. Nobody, I repeat, nobody seems all that concerned about the blistering problem right now. Let's check in with Gary Gerould. Gary?
Well, we're down here in Camp Penske, and Al Unser Jr., of course, running a solid second, and we were just doing some quick checking on his pit stop sequence. He went 41 laps on that last stop. We're anticipating him now in 7 laps on lap 125. The point we want to make here is that it looks like he's getting excellent mileage, and he's on the threshold of turning this 500-mile race into a 5 pit stop race. If he can, that could be huge. Now, yellow flags, of course, could have a major influence on that. But they love the way the car's handling. We'll see him inside of 7 laps for his 3rd stop of the day.
Christian Fittipaldi, boy, he came in, tried to make a stop. Didn't get it stopped at all. He's going to have to go around.
Well, those guys were lucky they moved out of the way on that one, Paul. He just obviously didn't see his pit, went right by his tires. Thank God he didn't hit one of them. Did a lot of wiggling and right back on the track. Now he goes around another lap, comes back in. He felt that the loss would be less this way than it would have if they'd had to pull him back in.
Currently runs 17th, Christian Fittipaldi. Here's a replay of that, Bobby.
Yeah, and here's he locking up the front tires. He can't stop. Now, I think he should have stopped and got pulled back. That would have saved a heck of a lot less time, or taken a lot less time than going around here. It comes back in again.
There's the problem of the carbon fiber brakes hooked up with the problem of getting onto the concrete smoothly. It's very hard to get these cars slowed down here.
Bobby, which surface will give you more braking, the asphalt or the concrete?
Well, it just depends on the state of it. Right now we have new asphalt, which has more traction than the concrete. By the time the asphalt cures, it'll probably come being close to the same.
Mauricio Gugelmin in trouble. He was running 4th. Look at the back end there, Bobby.
Smoke coming out of the back. That's a sign that he's probably got an engine problem. And keep in mind on the engine problem, they're wide open all the way around this racetrack, and especially with the 40 inches of manifold pressure. Literally wide open all the way around the track.
And what that will do is bring Eddie Cheever up into 4th place. Cheever, who's back in the cycle now. Gary?
Mauricio Gugelmin, and they suspect that it's a wheel bearing problem at the right rear. That's one of those stress load factor deals that you always contend with at Michigan. The crew is assessing right now. Big Mo gets a cool drink. Now the engine is turned off, and they've got some work to do. What an unfortunate break for Gugelmin.
Yeah, and when the smoke comes out the back like that, we often think that it's a engine, but in this particular case, those bearings are going to smoke too. We've seen a lot of bearing problems so far today, and there it is, the right rear. Those guys already knew it. And what happens is the car starts wiggling on the racetrack. The drivers have already been told that they're going to have or could have these problems, so it's just a normal thing. But the reason they keep changing them is almost all the guys seem to be having this problem. So how it turns out on the end is the guy that does the fastest work in a hurry going to come out ahead, I guess.
I think that, I'm not absolutely sure of this, Bobby. I think the problems are being confined mostly to the Renard cars. We'll have to keep tabs on that. Certainly not to the Penske cars, and I don't believe to the Lolas either. Let's keep an eye on that.
When you saw Christian Fittipaldi come into the pits and then go back out, you also saw him run over, not with just 2 wheels, but all 4 wheels, the hose. And so they black flag him, bring him in for a stop and go penalty. But as all these other people fight their problems, this guy just keeps motoring. Andre Ribeiro still the leader, and the leader now by 11 seconds over Al Unser Jr.
But I mentioned that if the suspension problems are hitting Renards, you're looking at a Renard right there. So, does trouble wait for Andre Ribeiro or not?
You know, the mechanics that set up these things, these bearings are great big ball bearings, giant ball bearings in the right rear uprights that are going bad. And it's how much preload, how the mechanics set them up. And some of the guys in there use a different type of grease than the other guys do on those bearings. They always are overused, though.
Gary Gerould as Little Al comes in.
This time it was 37 laps as opposed to 41 laps on the last tank of fuel. Not anticipating any changes on the setup. Oh, he engages the gears. The car moved forward a couple of inches, no problem. Now he's away in 13.5 seconds.
So the stop start once again. Al Unser Jr. comes in after 37 laps out on the course. and 37 laps of green, we might add. Fastest lap of the race thus far, Parker Johnstone, lap 84, 231.7.
That is faster than qualifying. He's really raised the price of poker here at Michigan. Problem is, right rear upright went out on him.
The Mercedes-Benz has managed now 37 laps between fuel stops. The Honda, Andre Ribeiro, he's got at least 39 laps since his last stop. And Scott Pruitt, Ford Power, right now at 35 laps. You saw this car just moments ago, Adrian Fernandez, as he battled Teo Fabi, and in doing so picked up 4th place. Expect the leader in shortly. And he already begins to slow down. Andre Ribeiro in for routine service. Once again, this fellow who has never led an IndyCar race before this day, doing a terrific job.
And Paul, the one thing that the crew wants to see besides changing the tires is if they were able to cure the blistering problem. Checking the right front, no problem on this set of tires for your leader, Andre Ribeiro. So it's going to be a nominal stop. Looks to be no changes in the chassis. Looked as if they've cured the problem simply with 16.3 seconds. As I said, simply changing tire pressures.
Very smooth stop, just past the halfway point here.
So I just want to explain that tire pressure a bit, Paul. The more air that's in it, the more the tire tries to bow out in the middle, or the more the air pushes the tire out in the middle, and that's where they were blistering. So what the tire guys would have done is just drop the tire pressure by 2 to 3 pounds.
I'm surprised. I thought that was a biased tire problem that didn't occur in the radial.
No, it affects all tires because the air is still trying to go out, and it doesn't make any difference. The radials obviously don't change the shape as much as the bias ply tires do, but they still do change it, Paul. Don't you remember a few years back?
Bobby, he is not up to speed. What's going on here? Ribeiro suddenly, when he comes out of the pits, just never came up to top speed. Scott Pruitt picked up the lead, but he should be in the pits any time now.
Very slow, possibly a transmission problem.
Yeah, transmission is what I would bet on. He caught a gear in what looked like a funny shift to me from first to second. Or maybe it was his second to third.
He's very slow. The wing shaking is not a problem. That's just a normal thing.
And Scott Pruitt now the leader, but he's due in, and that'll turn the lead over to Al Unser Jr.
Got a clean pit in, and then they're working on the car in front, but we're in good shape.
Again, a little blistering there on the right front, Gary Gerould.
Well, we see it as he comes rolling up, Paul, and now comes to a stop. Yes, clear blister on that right front, no question.
Give you the one
we'll
turn
see
up
if
on the
Pruitt
front
talks
wing.
to Jim McGee at all on the radio. That's open. Everything else routine. Now a change in the front wing angle attack, and it's a major change. Pruitt's rolling. 17 seconds, but the concern has got to be over the wear in those tires up front.
And what they did, Gary, is they turned up the right front wing, more downforce. They're going to put more pressure on the right front tire because he can't race as long as that thing is blistering the way it was.
Well, Paul, I'm down here with Andre Ribeiro. I asked the crew if they knew what was wrong. They shrugged their shoulders. They have taken the hood off. This looks as if it could be terminal for Andre Ribeiro. In fact, it is. He is going to get out of the car. What a tough break for this young man who had such a great ride here today in the Michigan 500. It's all over. We'll talk to him shortly.
And Al Unser Jr. is now in charge. You saw him as he came around Scott Pruitt as Pruitt was coming out of the pits. So little Al, having just made a stop, is now the leader of the race.
This is where Al Unser Jr. won his first ever oval race. It was an IROC race back in 1987.
So there's the leader of the race. We'll look back, see if we can find Scott Pruitt, who was a good 15 seconds back. And there he is. So that's the interval, first to second. Al Unser Jr. over Scott Pruitt, but a yellow flag could change that very quickly. Brian Herta has not stopped in his third. Nothing has changed here. Al Unser Jr. is the leader, followed by Scott Pruitt, and Brian Herta should be heading into the pits anytime now, but there's a surprise in the Tasman pit, Jack.
Well, Paul, lots changed down here. Andre Ribeiro had gotten out of the car, had taken his harnesses off, his helmet off, was sitting down ready to give a lengthy interview with Brazilian TV. We were to follow. And now do you hear the noise? That's Andre Ribeiro's motor. The crew went to work. They isolated the problem to the wiring harness, not the motor. And now Ribeiro scampered back into the cockpit. He is back at the controls, and they're going to send him back out. He is so excited he's having trouble getting the car started and slipping the clutch to get it into gear. It's running a little rough. And now it looks as if they're going to stop it again. Gary?
Well, Andre Ribeiro, of course, is on Firestone tires, and Al Spire is the manager of Firestone Racing. Now, we've seen wear signs on some of these fronts, most recently here with Scott Pruitt. How big a concern is this, and did it surprise you?
Well, actually, we're not concerned at all, Gary. The cars are running quite fast. Some of the laps they've been turning recently are in 224, 225 mile an hour range. We have a harder compound tire that they can go to if they want, but all of the teams that are running fast, Tasman and Scott Pruitt in the Patrick Racing car, prefer to make chassis adjustments and stick with the tire they have, and we're not concerned about it right now.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jack?
Well, so far, Andre Ribeiro is now officially out of the race. They are going to roll it. And you can see this gentleman right here. Well, he's with Brazilian TV, and with Andre being his countryman, you give professional courtesy. They will continue and carry on the conversation in Portuguese. See if we can get in here real quickly, and we're going to listen as the interview is given. You're not. Go ahead. We want to listen in Portuguese to the interview. Excuse me? We want to listen to your interview with Andre in Portuguese.
Okay. Pois é, esse microfone é da ABC, eles querem acompanhar a nossa entrevista em português, a rede americana ABC. André, difícil, né? Você estava liderou muito essa corrida. Qual a sensação?
É um super desapontamento, mas não acaba aí, tem muita coisa pela frente. E eu tenho certeza que a gente chega lá.
Well, it's very obvious, and I don't know anything about Portuguese, but right now I'm sure Andre Ribeiro said that he was one of the most disappointed drivers ever to come down the pike. We'll talk to him after the Brazilians are through.
Yeah, but he does have a day that he can be proud of. I mean, it was a great run while it lasted. Al Unser Jr., leader of the race, has now completed 143 laps. Another man who can be proud of this day is Parker Johnstone. Gary Gerould?
Well, indeed, he can be very proud. I know it's disappointing to be on this side of the pit wall. We were down there and saw that they were having a problem with the upright in the right rear, but you also had a very close call on the racetrack when there was a failure.
Well, we really did. God was looking over us today, because I had just gone under Eddie Cheever on the entry of turn 3, and the right rear upright failed and snapped me sideways, and I'm just very thankful I didn't get into Eddie. And it was so bad I couldn't even make it back to the pit lane. We circled around, came in, lost all the brakes. The guys on the Motorola Cellular, Firestone, Honda Renard crew from Comtech Racing did a great job. All that Daytona experience paid off. They got the upright change and went back out. Once again, the fastest car on the racetrack, which is a tribute to them. But the damage from the upright had damaged the brakes. And when I came in for my stop, the pedal went to the floor. And thankfully, we didn't go into the Penske crew, and unfortunately was into a fantastic oval debut. I learned a lot, and it looks like Andre and the Tasman guys were doing a great job, or have just retired as well. And I tell you, Honda's day is coming. It's just not today.
Well, he may be a rookie here in the ovals, but he got all the sponsors, he got all the teams. We're happy you're all right. Thanks, Parker.
Thank you very much. And I got to tell you, thanks to Team Penske, to Rick Mears, Al Sr., and Al Jr. for all their coaching. What a fantastic weekend for us. Thanks, guys.
Let's go to Jack.
Well, Gary, let's try and get it in English from Andre Ribeiro this time. Andre, what happened?
We had some electrical problems. The wires did burn, and we had to stop. We did try to come back, but then we realized it was not possible.
Describe the emotional roller coaster that you just endured over maybe the last 5 minutes.
Well, I think we had a fantastic car. The LCI Honda car was just so much ahead of everybody else. For me, it was very easy because I was just cruising. Thanks very much, Honda, Firestone, and of course, Tasman, LCI. It was incredible feeling. Unfortunately, we had to stop a little bit early.
And we understand now, gentlemen, that Bobby Rahal's got some problems. Back to you.
Yeah, Jack, the man with the most experience in this race, 14 races, starting more than any other, was running 8th. Suddenly slowed down. He stopped only 12 laps ago, so certainly unscheduled. and he's shut the engine down already. Nothing changes on the course. Unser Jr., Pruitt, Eddie Cheever, Adrian Fernandez, and Eliseo Salazar, the top 5. Gary Gerould is now in the Rahal pits.
Well, I think it's the 4th one that I can be aware of this afternoon. It's a right rear wheel bearing once again, and we're seeing this now all too familiar scene of the crew working on the upright at the right rear. This time it's Bobby Rahal, second in points and up there challenging. He wants to stay out there. He wants to try to track down and gain points on Villeneuve.
Gary, this time it's a Lola. We've seen most of that problem hit the Renard, so this is something new.
I was just going to remind you of that, Sam. They're all having problems except the Penske so far.
100 laps to go yet with these failures. 19 cars running. Buddy Lazier is still in the pits. They're working on his car, and they're working on Bobby Rahal's car.
Another thing you want to keep in mind, if you're wondering, we have a spin out and an accidental.
And it's Hiro Matsushita. Took a spin up in 4 and doesn't look like he touched anything. Looks like he just had a right rear go and got down on the grass, but he's kicked a lot of debris up on the track, dirt and gravel. So they're yellow. First time, very long time. This race has been running at a record pace, fastest 500 ever, 194 miles an hour. 5 miles an hour than the record set here in 1990 by Al Unser Jr. Boy, look at all the grass that he tore up. So Hiro Matsushita brings out the yellow flag at the 150th lap. Just lost it coming off of 4 and didn't touch anything, so maybe he'll get her back into the fight. We'll be back. Back under a full course caution, the leader of the race, Al Unser Jr. And under this caution, though, Al Unser Jr. comes into the pits, and that gives Scott Pruitt the lead. It's a great way to see a race hanging overhead and watching the race from the Goodyear blimp. It's the Spirit of Akron floating over this circuit here. So the leader of the race comes in. Al Unser Jr. makes his stop. Scott Pruitt picks up the lead under the yellow for Hiro Matsushita, who looks like he just had a problem with the right rear that caused him to come out of control. Let's go down to Gary Gerould. Maybe he can enlighten us on some of these tire problems.
Well, we heard from Al Spire with Firestone a short time ago. They're having wear on the right front. Leo Mel is the general manager of racing for Goodyear. You're having tire wear concerns here on the right rear. How substantial is this problem, Leo?
Well, we've had some blistered right rear tires, and we've lowered the air pressure on a number of cars. It seems to be helping. What's happening, they're blistering slightly, but it's not affecting. Nobody's had to stop early. We just had punctures on the 33 and the 18 car in that last accident, but I think we're okay for the rest of the race.
Okay, that's the story from the Goodyear side. Let's go to Jack.
Well, Gary, they're going to take advantage of this caution period. The Patrick team has called in Scott Pruitt as we listen on the scanner as well. Now, watch the crewmen at the front of the car. Once they've completed the exchange, they'll go to the nose, make a turn. They're going to take the wing out. That was the amount of wing that they put in the last stop, and he almost stalls it. Boy, was that close, guys.
Well, that could be costly. They'd have to pull the car back, restart it. Too costly, Jack.
My Scooter got it out of the pits, though. You know, there's some good news here. We've got some great physicians that work on the circuit with us. Dr. Terry Trammell and Dr. Steve Alvey were recognized and, in fact, honored by the National Athletic Association, NATA, in June for their contributions to athletic training and motorsports medicine. Dr. Alvey was inducted as an honorary member of NATA for his contributions, and Dr. Trammell was presented with the prestigious President's Challenge Cup Award, presented each year to a physician that's made a significant impact in sports medicine and in athletic training. We're very proud of both of them and thankful for the good service that they give all the drivers and crews here in IndyCar.
Well,
one of the interesting things about the coverage, too, while we stay under this yellow, is the international coverage. This goes from these satellites up globally and in many, many different languages.
Bem-vindo às 500 milhas de Michigan, apresentado por Speedstick.
Добро пожаловать на 500-мильную гонку в Мичигане, которую представляет фирма Speedstick.
Bienvenidos a la carrera de Michigan 500, presentada por Speedstick.
And we welcome you, too, to the Michigan 500 presented by Speedstick. ESPN International sending those signals all over the world. So it is a full course caution, the only way they do it on an oval. And look back there behind the grandstand as we push in. That's the TV compound where they control this race from. Look at all those trucks and look at all those satellite dishes.
All fully air conditioned down there. Incredible comfort, of course, everybody works in.
Sam, it's air conditioned where we sit too, and it isn't too bad right
It sure
here.
isn't on the stands. You see the people sweltering on the lower right of that screen.
Biggest crowd we've seen in a long time.
So as we ride with Stefan Johansson, we remind you that in 2 weeks there's more IndyCar action here on ABC as the IndyCar's best head off to the road course at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. Defending champion Al Unser Jr. challenges the field at the Miller Genuine Draft 200. That's Sunday, August 13th here on ABC Sports. Hero had a problem. Gary, he's with you?
He is indeed. Hero, are you all right? I saw them taping your wrist here. Was there any injury at all or any physical problems?
No, I'm okay. Just taping for wrist, protect the wrist.
Now, what happened with that rear tire? Was it a puncture and get into the under tray or the underwing?
I believe the tire got a puncture. It's happened coming out from the downfall. I was super lucky.
Well, indeed you were. We're glad you're all right. The best part of this day for Hero right now is the fact that he's standing right here by the ice. He's about to dive into it. I wish I could, too. Let's go back to Paul.
Yeah, stay out of there, Gary. It belongs to him. Parker Johnstone, after he's out of the race, has been kind enough to join us on a headset, can watch the coverage here as well. Parker, we've seen these problems with the right rears. What do you think's happening there?
Well, Paul, I'm very surprised. We did a lot of testing down in Texas World Speedway and also in Michigan prior to this race in 95 to 100 degree heat. We had a problem with one upright very early on in our testing. We corrected that problem, and I'm very surprised to see the failures we're seeing today on these Renards.
Well, we should head back to green flag at the conclusion of this lap, so stay with us, Parker, and jump in any time if you would. Al Unser Jr. will lead Scott Pruitt and Eddie Cheever to the green. Well, Cheever is staying in this thing. AJ's playing some tactics here today. Back up to full speed.
And keep in mind, little Al had about a 20-second lead. Now they're all closed up on him.
Parker, look at those guys. Can you believe you were out there with them just a few minutes ago?
Well, I tell you, once you get in the car, the whole world changes, and as well as the track's holding up today, and as good as our Motorola Sailor car was, we could drive low, middle, high. Those guys are having a great time out there, but they're also balancing the risk every single lap with potential gain or loss.
So now the field spreads out. Al Unser Jr., Scott Pruitt are the fight at the front. Eddie Cheever there as well. Go on board with Adrian Fernandez. He runs in fourth place. Plenty of traffic ahead.
Everybody except the guys in the front are really picking up a big draft right now.
We'll just ride with Adrian. Parker, you were the fastest guy here all day. Why don't you take us around for a lap? What are you thinking at these points?
Well, right now, I can tell you, Adrian's looking at Christian Fittipaldi, wondering if he's going to come down on him or give him some room. And as you can see, there was enough of a wash off of Christian's car that Adrian had to get out of the throttle there. He's going to have to time his run a little bit better, because if you don't get a good run at the appropriate time, he's going to be stuck in this group and not be able to get through it.
They're both picking up a draft from the guys clear up in front. They've got a big whirlwind going on around there now. Once the cars all get going together, kind of makes it like a little whirlwind going.
Adrian's going to give it another try here, but once again, he's going to get shut off by Christian. What he needs to do is get a little stronger run off him out of turn 2 and go inside hard, even down onto the apron, to make Christian realize that he's serious about getting by there.
And Parker, as good as these onboard cameras are, does this really show you what the banking is like here?
You know, I was really surprised. We were here testing a month ago, and I took my mountain bike up just to take a ride around the track, and you can't believe how steep it is in turns 1 and 2. I mean, it's a serious hard pedal up to the top, and when you're in the car, it seems like it's nearly flat.
We're going to move around here and pick up Bobby Rahal, who runs in 14th place as he comes under Teo Fabi, who started alongside Parker in the front row. Parker, we understand from starting that you can handle the heat because you're tough and from Oregon, but what about the rest of these guys? How bad was it out there?
Well, I do a lot of training for triathlons. I don't actually compete because my team owners don't want me to get hurt, but You'd be amazed at the number of physical fitness programs and careful diets that every one of these drivers are on. There's only one or two that don't adhere to some sort of strict daily training. And I've got to mention while we're on board here with Bobby Rahal that I could hear the cheer from the Honda pits when I drafted by Bobby the first time around past start finish. And it's one of those things. Bobby did a great job for Honda, but just couldn't hold on. And I've talked to Bob recently, and he really wants to come back.
And there goes Adrian Fernandez. You were just on board with him a few moments ago as he sails past Bobby Rahal. 162 laps complete.
Parker, you talk about the fitness. I know that measurements made, tests made with drivers have seen that their heart rate goes up about triple or even more what it is at rest. Are you ever aware of that when you're driving?
Well, I actually wore a heart rate monitor during a test not too long ago, and my resting heartbeat right now is 42 beats a minute. My maximum is just over 200. And it's very interesting. Prior to the start of the test, my heart rate was actually higher than when I was actually driving. And I think, like any aerobic athlete, I think what you find with these drivers is that on restarts or the start of the race, their heart rate's probably pretty elevated, but now they're back into some sort of nice pace.
Oh, Parker, here's a problem. Eddie Cheever was running third, slowing down. It's only been 11 laps since his last stop. Gary Gerould, you're there with AJ. Watch out.
AJ is talking on the radio. The headset has come out. What's the problem, AJ?
I don't know. Something happened, I guess, to the motor or drive gear. We won't know till he gets here.
I'll tell you what, I know you'd been frustrated because this season had turned around from such a successful early start. Things were going very well up to this point today.
Well, things are going good, but I guess something happened to the gearbox. I have no idea.
All right, well, you can hear the disappointment in his voice as he steps to the wall, and here comes Cheever. We told you last week as Eddie throws the steering wheel that AJ was going to go test for the Brickyard 400. He did test on Monday. We don't know for sure if he'll try to enter that race or not. We suspect he will. And look at the body language now from Eddie Cheever as he just bangs that fist in frustration. He knew he had a good race car today and a great chance at a 500-mile win.
And look at the shield on his helmet, how tethered that is from the air. That gives you an idea how much wind beating they take out there.
So Eddie Cheever, after a terrific run for A.J. Foyt, showed that he was back and ready to fight once again. Climbs out of the car. Al Unser Jr. is still leading. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC stations. Well, in the last few laps, the gap has been steadily closing between Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr., the leader, and now it is a fight for the lead as Scott Pruitt tries to overhaul him on the high side. 171 laps of the 250 are complete. Scott Pruitt has been able to chase down Al Unser Jr. Let's watch and let's listen to the two-way radio. Johnstone, you continue to watch. This is a super little duel. Scooter really moved up on him.
He really did, and what you're seeing is a classic drafting duel, just like we've seen in stock cars recently. And this is, now that they've resurfaced MIS, what a great place, what a great battle. Scotty's going high, Al's got the low line. This is going to be a real race of strategy between these two.
Well, looking at this onboard camera, when do you begin to feel the vacuum behind the car ahead of you?
Scott's definitely got it now. He's just got to get his timing right so that he can pull up at Little Al at just the right time to duck underneath him, either at the entry of 1 or turn 3. He's definitely got the toe now, and if he times this right, he might be able to get in underneath him.
Scott tries to get him high. Again, he just doesn't have enough to do it. Can he get him coming off of the corner? Now still tucked in. We'll continue to watch this battle for you. A year ago here, Eddie Cheever started driving for A.J. Foyt. He almost had one wrapped up for him today, Gary.
Yeah, and the vacant look in the eyes, I think, really tells the tale. We keep an eye on that battle up front. And, Eddie, I know you felt like you had both Pruitt and Unser covered. You thought you could surpass them.
I think my car was probably the best one out there in traffic. It was running very well. I'm bitterly disappointed. I think something went wrong in the drivetrain in the back, but it was a heck of a race. And my compliments go to Penske for repaving this place. It's a lot of fun to race here now.
I know it's been tough in recent weeks. There have been a lot of disappointments for you and this team, and this looked like it was going to be a real bright spot.
I thought I had probably the best chance of anybody out there to win the race, but we didn't. Again, thank you.
It's Eddie Cheever.
Remember Pruitt's pursuit of the lead at Indianapolis. And
boy, look at it here, though. Scott Pruitt tries it low and takes the lead.
Whoa.
Scott Pruitt out in front. Boy, and he really, the draft worked there.
It really did. You saw what Scott had to do is he had to drop way back to get another run on Al because he had lost his momentum, and he timed it just perfectly, used the draft, went right by him, and I'm sure now we'll see Scott pull out from little Al.
Happy Pat Patrick there.
Well, you can see the smile on Pat Patrick's face, but what you're seeing right now, you're seeing the guys run their racing gears opposed to their overdrive gears. And Penske have probably told little Al to eat the...
Whoa, look at this. Back. As they get caught up behind the slower car of Brian Herta, who is not in the battle, and little Al tries to make the move.
Almost had him captured there.
Well, there's where momentum just pays off.
Whoa, and one car in trouble. This is Salazar, and it is yellow. And you heard Jimmy McGee scream pit to Scott Pruitt. Boy, a gentle kiss of the wall.
You can see water running out from under that car right there. Look at the number 7, the water running down. Probably water, not fuel. It's probably what caused him to spin. Probably broke a radiator or a hose or something like that.
So here is Scott Pruitt in. Tires look good, off and on. And Al Unser Jr. has already been in and out of the Penske pits.
Well, here's the deal on Scott Pruitt, guys. This is not what they wanted to see. They had hoped to push the window to lap 196 with the idea in mind that they could then go with one final stop in the waning moments for just a couple of gallons of fuel. The window for Pruitt had only opened up 3 laps before that. So now, if you heard him say go 7 o'clock on the fuel, there's a reason for that. What they're doing is they're trying to signal to Scott Pruitt to conserve as much fuel as possible so they can still adhere to that gas and go philosophy at the end of this race. Gary?
Well, we're down here in the Penske pit. Jerry Breon, who's the tire man for Team Penske on Al Unser Jr.'s car, checking now the measurements as the tire that came off. No signs of wear whatsoever. We had checked with him just a few minutes ago, and he said that on the previous stop they did have one very small blister. It did not impact the wear of the tire at all or the performance of the car. So Breon and the crew talk. They plot more tire strategy. Roger Penske, of course, is on the wall in that familiar pose just a few feet away, and this Penske team knows they've got a fight on their hands with Scott Pruitt in the Michigan 500, Paul.
Well, the average speed was coming up. It was up at 188 miles an hour. This caution's going to hurt it, but it's going to make for a terrific race here at the front between Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr. We'll be back. Eliseo Salazar of Chile has brought out this yellow. It's a result of a blown engine over in 1. Now let's take a look from Adrian Fernandez on board camera. Fernandez up there in that pack, coming off of 4, down across the tri-oval and across the start finish. Now keep an eye way ahead up there. Boom, there goes the engine. Now then all the water out of the engine sprays back not only on our camera but on Adrian's visor, and then he almost collects Salazar as Salazar spins up to the wall off of turn 2. Here it is again. Watch Fernandez. He's virtually blinded.
Whoa. Well, that was close, and there wasn't anything anybody could do about that. Certainly wasn't Salazar's fault. It was an engine that just literally exploded. Look at the white smoke coming out. The white smoke is oil, water, everything getting together. Now you can see the spray. Look at it way up there. Then the spray comes back and gets on the next car.
Salazar must have seen it coming because he got down low. The IndyCar safety team trying to get the course cleaned up there off of 2. In the meantime, let's go to Jack.
Well, this man knows what it's like to go to victory lane, but it's been a while for Pat Patrick. You got out of racing, you came back to try and help Firestone get involved. And Pat, you only live just down the road here, but the question is, what are you going to do about your fuel strategy? Because it looks, I noticed you and Jim McGee were chatting about it and trying to decide, is it going to be a gas and go we may see at the end?
I can't really elaborate on that because Jim and I haven't agreed yet.
Oh boy, Jim, why don't you get in here now? What part of it do you want to argue for? A gas and go?
We haven't agreed to disagree either.
This is what makes racing so very important, though, the strategy that unfolds on pit road. Forget the drivers during the caution. You guys are checking your telemetry, you're checking between yourselves and the years of experience. What do you think will be the determining factor, Pat?
Well, it depends on how the cars perform, and Al's running very well. Of course, so is our car. The Firestone tires are doing excellent. As you know, the two Honda cars are the fastest cars on the track. Roger is a tough guy, and it seemed like old times, he and I fighting it out. I just hope we're both here at the end.
Well, the great thing, guys, when he was talking to me, look at over here. Jim McGee had one ear cocked, and he kept trying to see what Pat might say to see if he could get an edge on that argument and that agreement to disagree.
A couple of real smart cats right there.
Next Saturday on ABC Sports, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway will roll out the red carpet for the stars of stock car racing. Defending champion and NASCAR points leader Jeff Gordon battles a field of the sport's finest at the Brickyard 400 live. And then on ABC's Wide World of Sports, Dale Earnhardt and the world's top drivers battle in identical cars in the International Race of Champions, and I'm telling you, don't miss that one. Plus, we begin coverage of the World Track and Field Championships from the Otberg, Sweden. That's all Saturday here on ABC Sports. After 181 laps, there is the full field rundown under the yellow, so everybody's tucked up nice and tight. Interesting names there moving up. Johansson, St. James, Jimmy Vasser, who had a 1 minute and 29-second pit stop, would put him behind. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Well, we heard from Pat Patrick. Here's the other friendly rival for so many years, and it's kind of like old times. We're saying Roger Penske battling Pat Patrick's team. Your thoughts, your concerns at this stage of the race now for your driver, Al Unser Jr.
Well, I think we've got a real good car. Pruitt's running well. It's great to be racing Pat here at the Michigan Speedway. I think the key thing is trying to finish. You know, we've run strong in this race before last year. We let it need to keep this pace under control because it's tough on the engines, run them over 13,000 every lap. So, you know, our concern is reliability all day. The engine's been running great, the Mercedes, and what we have to do now is just work smart. Al feels good with the car, and we'll see what happens. I'm sure it'll be a shootout at the end.
Last night you had a reception honoring your 500 champions over the years, and you have all those beautifully restored race cars. What would it mean to Team Penske to come back and win this 500-miler in view of the frustrations you've had thus far this year?
Well, in racing, there's nothing like momentum, and I can tell you that to win this race would be great. Al won the IROC race yesterday, so maybe it's a good weekend for us. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed, Gary, and Al's doing a heck of a job.
Thanks, Roger.
You know, since we mentioned it, the Penske restoration area just outside of this track is the home to 20 of 24 Penske chassis that have been built since 1974. And there they are. All the machines restored to their original driving condition. Each car in working condition is run once a year. The current project is restoring and rebuilding the original PC-1 driven by Mark Donohue. Photographs are reused to build the car, and it's a very long process.
As far as man hours on rebuilding something like this will probably take us about 12 to 18 months for 2 people to build this particular car. We do manufacture a lot of our pieces in-house here.
As we mentioned then last night, 6 of Penske's Indy 500 winners gathered at the Penske Restoration Shop. What an amazing collection of talent. So we're still under yellow here. Scott Pruitt is the leader. 184 laps are complete. It should be a great run to the finish in the Michigan 500. Back at the Michigan 500, presented by Speed Stick, 185 laps of 250 complete. Here's the way the engines break down. Scott Pruitt in that Ford has been very powerful throughout the day. Interesting commentary last night. Some of the people from Mercedes-Benz complained that we suggested and have suggested that the Mercedes does not get the distance that Ford does. Well, we're about to find out because it's a head-to-head battle now with Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr. stopping on exactly the same time 5 laps ago. Lynn St. James now runs 9th in that 90th car, or number 90 car. Past couple of weeks, she's been helping us out here in your absence, Bobby, and I got to tell you.
She's done a very good job today, Paul.
Well, she did a very good job sitting in your chair, too, pal.
I don't know about in the booth, but on the racetrack, I think she looks plenty good. But in my seat, maybe not so good.
I would do everything I could to get her a ride next year, my friend. Let's go down to the pits and Gary Gerould.
Well, Danny Sullivan is one of those that's lurking there, and I think 7th position, Paul, and they're doing it despite radio frustrations. The crew can hear Danny. Danny, however, can't hear any instructions from this side of pit wall, so they soldier on in the number 7 spot, Pac West.
There's Stefan Johansson. He runs now in 8th place, so he's been able to keep that 94 Penske car alive, and just ahead of him is Christian Fittipaldi, ahead of him on the race course, but Christian's 10 laps behind. Emerson Fittipaldi is sitting in 6th place, just ahead of Danny Sullivan.
I just looked out and counted 17 cars left running right now, and we're really going to have a trophy dash to the end, it looks like. One more fuel stop. It's going to be a fierce one.
The yellow flag is still out. This is one of the few tracks, or not one of the few. Last week was the only track that we don't have the EDS computer scoring system. We have it here. It's not only used by us, but Scott Pruitt's engineer using the EDS display for the first time in the pits. Many of the teams use it, and it's really helpful. Gary Gerould?
Well, Eliseo Salazar had a 4th place finish in the other 500-mile race during the month of May at Indianapolis. Today, I know you had high hopes, but tell us what happened now that puts you out in that incident.
Yeah, well, I have mixed feelings with the race because I'm disappointed that we didn't finish. The engine went in turn 1, and, you know, all the oil went in the tires, you know, and I was lucky to hit the wall, but very lightly. So mixed feeling because of the disappointment, but also, you know, I think we did a good race. We were going to dice for the lead, you know. I was dicing with Pruitt, and I think we proved, you know, that on super speedway we were very good, so I'm very happy.
Contrast the different driving styles first at Indianapolis as opposed to the high banks and the speed you experience here with less boost.
Well, I think, you know, you go flat all the time. That's what really kills the engine. You know, there was the previous stint I went flat, you know, for 30 laps, and the engines are running very, very strong.
Well, we're about to go green. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eliseo Salazar back here, and he's healthy and fine.
All right, they begin to pick up the pace on the backstretch now. 185 laps complete. Scott Pruitt, the leader. Al Unser Jr. will be chasing him. It should be a great fight. Interesting battle of contrasts here. Engines, Ford and Pruitt. Mercedes-Benz in Al Unser Jr.'s Firestone tires on Scott Pruitt. Al Unser Jr. shot with Goodyear. And, of course, 2 different chassis types sitting there. So we'll watch this battle as the green comes out and it begins to unfold.
Pruitt
Look at Little Al.
Pruitt can be very intimidating on a racetrack. You see Little Al on the left, Pruitt on the right. He's shouldered his way past several cars during this season. He's definitely one of the most aggressive drivers.
Oh, Al Unser Jr. just slides past Scott Pruitt on that race start. And Pruitt now has to give chase, but he does have traffic ahead. And one car sitting up very high.
Now keep in mind, too, if either one of these guys or these 2 drivers, Pruitt or Little Al, run their engines too hard, too much RPM too long, they're liable to break them.
Here comes Pruitt back on a challenge with Al Unser Jr. And Pruitt comes down inside him, and Pruitt comes back into the lead.
Boy, he timed that beautifully.
Now you can tell. Let's watch and see what Little Al does, and that'll be by the instructions from Roger Penske on what he wants him to do. Meaning, does he want to turn the RPM, or does he want to have a little bit more gamble or assurance that he's going to finish, turn less RPM?
Now Pruitt overhauls Teo Fabi.
Pruitt, of
slows
course,
him down just a little bit. That gives Al Unser Jr. a bit of a chance.
Pruitt driving for Pat Patrick, who has not had a winner since 1989 when Emerson Fittipaldi won the championship for him. That's how much this counts.
It's almost a shame that you can't see how much banking from the camera's ball there really is. It's really a steep place that we just went through there.
Parker had a great example of that, riding his mountain bike up it, finding how steep it was. Just try walking up that in loafers or something. There's DeFerrin, and of course Pruitt and DeFerrin came together in the last laps of the race just last week. So to see them this close, they almost came to blows physically after that incident. So there's a lot gone down between these 2 men just in this last week.
Bobby Little Al doesn't seem to be able to mount a challenge right now.
It's because Penske is telling him there's still plenty of time to the end of the race. He's using the draft, and I'll guarantee he's running in what I call the overdrive gear. Roger Penske will not be flustered, and he's going to give Little Al the orders that are necessary. He's going to try to push Scott into running more RPM and breaking his engine. That's the whole contest right now.
It's been 6 races since Little Al had a podium finish, if you don't count Portland, where he won and was disqualified. But he...
Whoa! And Lyn St. James and Danny Sullivan are together.
They're really hung together. Those cars are actually stuck together right there. They can't get apart.
Let's check both drivers. Danny Sullivan not moving in that cockpit. Can't tell about Lynn. So the yellow is out again. That was a pretty hard hit on the right side for both cars.
Quite a bit of damage. If you look at the rear wing, it's gone off of Danny's car onto the right there. Lynn is to the left. Lynn is moving.
And Danny's head's still down. And another car involved, Herta.
Minus the left front wheel.
So what brought all of this on? And is Danny okay?
Look at all the parts scattered all over.
Brian Herta,
who was
limps
running
it back
in
into the pits.
4th place. That really takes Herta out of a hot finish.
Apparently some concern about Danny. Lyn St. James moving around there. They walked away from her car, so apparently she's okay. They want to try and get the field slowed down onto the lower line there.
Gonna wait and see how it goes. As far as you know, if we cut a tire, if I start feeling anything funny, I'll let you know. But we'll just kind of ride it out here for right now.
Okay, 10-4, you just keep us posted as to how long you think it's going to be. We need a couple of 3 laps before you think it's going to go green.
So the conversation between Jim McGee and Scott Pruitt. Here come the contestants from last week. Combatants. Bobby Rahal, this may give us an idea of what happened there. Coming off of 4, off of 1, there's first car up into the wall, parts all over the place. Both cars together. Boy, Rahal almost caught a wheel carrier, up carrier and wheel.
Yeah, both cars got together, went into the wall together, it looked like. Not quite as good a picture we like to see yet.
Hard to tell if that was an engine going and then they got together, or if that smoke came off of tires locked up because they were already in trouble.
Looked like tires, Paul, but it could have been an engine.
One of those out was Brian Herta running in 4th place, Jackaroo.
And we're showing you the damage on Brian Herta's car. It is a mess on the left side. Brian, tell us what happened out there.
Well, I saw a little smoke. I think Adrian blew an engine, and it looked like maybe Danny was up there. They collected each other. They had nowhere to go, and one of their wheels came back off the wall and bounced right at me. I tried to miss it, and you know, there's just no room.
At these speeds, how much of it is thinking and how much of it is just plain reflex when you see a wheel bounding towards you?
Well, that's all reflex there. You know, the Target Scotch video car was running great, and you know, we were looking forward to a good finish today. I'm disappointed for the crew, but you know, I got some useful miles here at Michigan. I've never raced before, and I'm looking forward to the next race in Mid-Ohio.
Guys, this is the difference between our normal 200-mile events and a 500-miler, the stuff that happens after 250 miles.
Well, there it is again, and still we're going to have to do some more analysis to find out what happened to Danny Sullivan, Lyn St. James, and as Brian Herta mentioned, maybe even Adrian Fernandez. We'll be back after these messages and a word from our ABC stations. Well, they're still working with Danny Sullivan. Lyn St. James is out of her car. And Brian Herta also in this accident. We're concerned about Danny. We'll give you an update as soon as we know. Now watch as he comes down through the debris. Now look at this. Look at that wheel and hub carrier. That's a lot of weight. And bang, it hits the car, takes off the onboard camera, as well as the left front.
That tire had been down and gone back up and came back down again.
This is Lyn St. James. It's a report transported to the infield care center here. And she's moving around, but obviously they want to take a look at her. So that was a whale of an impact, and they're very concerned about Danny Sullivan. There was several questions about whether or not any parts of the car might have gotten into the cockpit. We took a look at that possibility, and it doesn't seem to be reality, but we are concerned about Danny Sullivan. So we're under a caution here. Scott Pruitt is the leader, and he's been talking back and forth with his team manager, Jim McGee. Al Unser Jr. is second. Adrian Fernandez was not part of that, despite the description that you heard from Bryan Herta, and he is on the course in third place. Teo Fabi is now fourth. Bryan Herta is still being scored in fifth place, but obviously he's out of the run. So we continue to wait for a green flag once again here at the Michigan 500. It's been a very typical day at Michigan. Still full course caution. Danny Sullivan has just been extricated from the car and is now being moved over to the ambulance. We should see several more laps of yellow, which may figure into the tactics of the two front runners, Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr. As yet, we have no official word on the condition of either Lyn St. James or Danny Sullivan. And we've talked about the banking earlier. That's why all those guys are being very careful with that gurney. It is so steep there, they have to make sure they don't have it get loose on the way down the banking. So they're going to take Danny, get him in the ambulance.
We think of Danny's glamour and, of course, his long, very successful career in car racing, Formula One, coming here to Indy, driving for Roger Penske, winning the Indianapolis 500. But he has also paid the price from time to time. He's been injured several times in his career, and let's just hope it's not seriously this time.
We mentioned Dr. Steve Alvey earlier. Looks like he was one of the folks right there helping tend Danny Sullivan. Let's go over to Gary Gerould.
In the Penske camp, Roger Penske up there on the wall and plotting strategy, and what they're trying to do now is play a waiting game as these yellow flag laps tick off so very slowly. 200 laps now complete, 400 miles, 100 miles to go. What they want to do, if at all possible, is get to lap 210 to open up the fact that then they would not have to make another pit stop the rest of the way. Keep in mind, early, they did get 41 laps under green flag conditions. The next stop, however, was 37 laps. They can get to 210. They think they can make it the rest of the way under green flag conditions. But at this very slow pace, they're still just under 10 laps away from that. Jack?
Well, Gary, down here in the Pat Patrick team, almost precisely the same thing is going on. One of the things that the team has been doing, though, has been watching the television monitor, first and foremost to see the condition of Lyn St. James and Danny Sullivan, but more importantly to try and assess how long this caution will take place. Their window opened up at lap 200. The farthest they've gone thus far today was 46 laps. They feel that if they can get into that 205 to 206 area, they could give Al Unser Jr. and Team Penske a chase right to the finish line without having to take on additional fuel. Now, one of the things to remember when we go back to green flag racing is listen to the onboard radio, because the team will say, go to 7 o'clock, go to 6 o'clock, go to 12 o'clock. One of the interesting things we found out, though, because people change teams, the teams change what those signals mean. If you lose a crew member, he goes to work for someone else. He monitors the radio and says, they go to 6 o'clock. That may mean go to full fuel. It may mean only go to 3/4 fuel. All kinds of tricks and all kinds of things up people's sleeves here. This is what makes the pit strategy so very important.
Well, we're still waiting for the preliminary medical report.
Ships to sweep up after they get the car gone.
They've been working on cleaning up a lot of that stuff except for what's right underneath the car. It looks like there's oil and water and such, so it's probably going to be, another little bit. I can't see until they get the car up off the ground how much crap's underneath it.
So that's Scooter talking with Jim McGee as they try to anticipate when this caution period will be over and when they will be able to do their final stops. We'll be back.
This Ford Fact is brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealers. Have you driven a Ford lately? Indy cars are so sensitive that accurate and repeatable chassis measurements are a must. By replacing the standard wheels and tires with setup wheels, which are manufactured from a solid piece of aluminum, bearings placed on the bottom, allows the car to settle in the same place each and every time on these pads, which are actual scales telling you how heavy that corner of the car is. The setup wheels also give you a flat plane to measure both the toe-in and toe-out angle and also what's known as camber angle. You can take a pair of calipers on a piece of fishing line here and take a measurement on the front and then take a measurement on the rear that will tell you toe in to 1/10 of a millimeter. To measure the camber, you would take an inclinometer, place it on that same flat plane. That will give you a measurement down to 1/100th of a degree. That may sound like a very small measurement, but drivers say they can feel the difference. And it took 6 months to develop this system. The team says it was well worth the effort.
Back at the Michigan 500, after 200 laps, 12 cars out of the race, 14 still running. Scott Pruitt the leader, the average way down now with 5 caution periods. 8 leader changes, 8 different leaders, 16 changes. Cars out of the race, well, fairly extensive. Attrition here is always a factor. Guerrero, Andretti, Raul Boesel, Paul Tracy, Parker Johnstone, Andre Ribeiro, Hiro Matsushita with that accident, Eddie Cheever with the transmission, Eliseo Salazar had the engine go and then got up close to the wall, didn't quite touch it. Lynn St. James, Danny Sullivan, and Brian Herta in the incident that has created this caution period. And as we take a look at the full field rundown, Adrian Fernandez up there looking good. Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr. It's going to be a battle to the finish. There's no question about that. And Teo Fabi, who started there in the middle of the front row, fell way back in the field, is now working his way up, as opposed to, say, Emerson Fittipaldi, who has been steadily marching forward in this field. So that's your full field rundown. And let's go to Gary Gerould.
Just outside the fence here at the safety center in the infield is owner Dick Simon, concerned, of course, because already today you've seen 2 of your drivers experience problems, walk away. Tell us about what happened with Lynn St. James and if you've had any conversation with her.
Well, Gary, Lynn was doing a magnificent job. She was running 8th, I believe, at the time, and the car was absolutely perfect. She didn't want any changes, and she just radioed into us as she was going into turn 1. I believe the engine is going to let go, and it did. And at that time, she also said, whoa, and I think that's when Danny Sullivan hit her. The next thing I heard on the cart monitor that we monitor, that she was okay. Driver code 1 means that she was okay, so I gather that she's fine.
Okay, we appreciate that, and we'll stand by, and when we have further word relating to either Lynn or to Danny Sullivan, of course, we'll pass it on, Paul.
Well, that certainly clears something up, and that is which car may have, in fact, had a blown engine. We had speculated it was Lynn St. James, but that testimonial there by Dick Simon certainly tells us that the facts were that she did have an engine go, and Danny Sullivan apparently became involved immediately thereafter. So that's the story on the accident that we have at this moment. You're looking down from the Goodyear blimp, the Spirit of Akron, which continues to give us shots high over this track, some great coverage shots, and helps explain some of the situations here, though not the last one. So Scott Pruitt, his friends call him Scooter, is out in front. Al Unser Jr. lined up just behind him. Bill DeFerrin's going to be in the middle of this too, and he's been running at the same pace with the leaders. We'll keep Scott's radio open and continue to monitor the radio traffic by permission, of course, of the team between Scott and Jim McGee, the team manager.
Now, most likely, let's watch. The guys are still cleaning up the racetrack, Paul. But both of these guys are probably going to come in. There's the mess that's still on the track. Now just watch. Both Pruitt and Little Al are waiting to come in the last minute that they can go, because they'd like to get as close to the end of the race on this last stop. We think they can do about approximately 40 to 43 laps on a full load of fuel.
And Jack Arute, Adrian Fernandez looking pretty good with 45 laps to go.
And you know, we talk about the good old days. Let's talk about Rick Gallis as well. He's put an ace face up on the deck here as well, because he is going to call his 3rd place driver onto pit road first of the leaders, thinking that maybe track position will help him just a little bit. They really feel like they have a chance to win this race. They've been talking to Adrian throughout this caution period, trying to pump him up, trying to literally get him to visualize what it would be like to go to victory lane. It's a little bit of cat and mouse down on pit road right now, guys. Everybody's monitoring everybody else, trying to see what's going to happen.
Adrian's coming in right now.
Exactly. So this is the first roll of the dice. Fernandez will be the first, and now the conversation will pick up with Pruitt and Al Unser. They'll have to determine, based on what Fernandez has done, whether they want to come in. Now, the word I just got, as far as Scott Pruitt is concerned, they're going to stick close to their original plan and come in on 207 or 208. That's next time around or thereafter.
Yeah, exactly. This is the 206th lap, still under caution. So Adrian has his fuel, and he'll rejoin the pack. There's still some dust on the course out there from the accident, so it's a little bit longer for the cleanup.
Fernandez had a weak early part of the season, but he has come on extremely strong in the last half dozen races with a couple of 6th places, a 7th and 8th, the 12th last week. He had trouble right at the end, but this man is very competitive at this point in the season.
All right, let's listen to Scott Pruitt and Jim McGee.
Set the fuel at 12 o'clock now, so when you leave, you're in good shape.
Keep hitting this lap then, right?
Lap, and then it's going to go green right after this lap. So you've got to get out and get to the end of the field. So put it at 12 o'clock, the fuel.
Remember that voice of Jim McGee. He masterminded.
You want to make sure you reset your meter. You got a clean pit in.
And there he goes, second card laid, Jack Arute, as Scott Pruitt comes in and Al Unser Jr. comes in right behind him. That's the rule. Follow the leader. Jack Arute?
Well, and they have run the string as far as they can because we have gotten the signal. Looks like 1 to go before we go back to green. Both cars getting service at this time. You can't ask for 2 better crews. Al is the first one down and out, but he is further back pit road, so it'll be a drag race to the end of pit road.
But Al beats him.
Now let's just see if they violated the speed limit. That's the big problem all the time, black flags.
Well, they've got a button on the steering wheel which can keep the speed down if they remember to push it.
I haven't heard him
battle.
I haven't heard him use this.
Let's listen.
Ready to go green. Get ready to go green.
Didn't mean to shush you there, Bobby.
That's all right. No, I was trying to listen to it too, Paul.
It's Lynn St. James.
Obviously, she's all right, and that's good news for us.
That voice of Jim McGee, remember, he monitored.
I used to listen to that a lot of times, Sam.
All right, 207 laps. Green flag is already out. Jim McGee gives them the word. And back in the pack now is where that battle will develop.
Adrian Fernandez would be the leader right now.
No, I don't think so.
I think he's in third on the same lap. He may be about to go down a lap.
It makes no difference now because that Al just gone by him whether he was on the same lap or a lap down, but I do think he was a lap down with you, Paul.
Al Unser Jr. tries to pull away from Scott Pruitt. Battle in the closing laps of the Michigan 500. Adrian drifts up. Scott comes down. They almost get together.
Not only going to be a contest of speed, but a contest between the Ford and the Mercedes. Not only in speed, but the mileage. It's going to be close for both of them, is my guess.
It's going to be incredibly close. They stopped 6 laps ago. The 203rd lap.
All green laps. We think that they'll go about 40 to 42 laps.
Well, you want to do that math, it doesn't sound like they're going to make it.
Well, they might. They had a little bit of yellow there, Paul, and they're going to run them lean. They're probably going to run them in high gears. Both of them are in the same problem.
Well, wait a minute. You run an engine lean in temperatures. One of the pits was reporting 102 degrees down there. You lean the engine down, and now what's going to happen?
Well, it might blow it, but these guys gamble a lot. Remember, winning is the only thing that's important.
Remember, Pruitt.
Side by side down the backstretch with Emerson Fittipaldi.
Remember Pruitt's desperate bid at Indianapolis, the last laps. He ran into oil there, crashed. He was bitterly disappointed, in tears at the end of that. He has slumped a little bit since then. They had a great early part of the season. This is the best he has done for some time. This is the big one, and he could win it.
Well, I looked down, looked up, saw that Penske car there. Let's get an update on Danny Sullivan. Finally, here's Gary Gerould.
Well, we had a chance to talk with Paul Harkus, who works on the crew for Danny, who was over here at the safety center very concerned. He's headed back to the pits now. He said Danny was complaining of pain in the foot, the knee, and the pelvis, and there are plans to air evacuate him to Foot Hospital, I believe, in nearby Jackson, Michigan. So they'll, of course, undergo observation and further testing and so forth. That's the information we have from Paul Harkus at this point with the team.
Well, we were worried about head damage. That's what worried us most. So in a lot of ways, all of that kind of damage sounds better to us. Thank you, Gary.
Well, and let's emphasize that that's Paul Harkus's description. We still don't have a medical description from IndyCar. 38 laps to go.
Danny had been contemplating retirement of a sort, so this comes at a very tough time decision-making wise for him.
Emerson Fittipaldi held Pruitt up there a little bit, and for one lap he came around 0.6 behind and then 67/100ths behind, so he dropped back just a little bit.
Little teamwork, maybe.
I think Emma would naturally try to help his teammate as much as he could, but this racetrack, being newly paved again, the grooves are all over the place. So there's ample place to pass here no matter where you are on the track.
Pruitt 1.5 seconds back. Pruitt, of course, has never won an IndyCar race. Al Unser Jr. has won 28, including races here.
Let's also keep in mind that if either one of these two drivers, Little Al's in the front, Pruitt's right behind him, both look like kind of wide on the screen there. Both of them, if they really run them hard, stand a good chance of breaking between now and the end.
Good set of corners for Pruitt. He closes in.
He's 1.1 back now. Good situation with Goodyear's incredible win streak, over 300 races consecutively on the line. Obviously right now as Pruitt pursues in his Firestone shod car. That's on the line.
All right, here's what we have from IndyCar thus far on Danny Sullivan. He has injuries. They're not defined, but he is conscious. That's all we have on Danny Sullivan from IndyCar officials at this moment. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, here's the story on Scott Pruitt. They are going to have to conserve fuel and conserve it in a big way. The telemetry and the hand figuring have given them the following. They need to average 2.147 miles per gallon in order to go the 250 lap distance here without coming into the pits again.
Well, Jack, he's trying to position himself to pick up a draft, that's for sure.
No, Sam, he's got a draft. He's had a draft since they threw the green.
Yeah, but is that another way to save mileage?
It is. In fact, that's what I was trying to interrupt you to tell you. Is Scott's gaining on this. I would disagree with Penske's or Little Al's theory. Little Al should be trying to run back and get the advantage of the draft helping the fuel mileage. What happens if you get a good enough draft, you can put it into the overdrive gear and go as fast as you would in your racing gear?
Yeah, I think Pruitt used a little of his fuel to close up enough so that he could use the draft. Don't you, Bobby? Good tactic.
He's got a good draft right now.
That's a beauty right there.
Little Al on the other side of the coin is cutting clean air all the way. He's having to run more power or more throttle to run the same speed.
What would you do if you were sitting in Little Al's car? Would you back out and let Pruitt around you?
No, I wouldn't back out now. They should have done that before. There's no time to be jockeying back and forth and make gains. The gain or the decision had to have been made when it went from yellow to green. And remember, this is the last segment to the end of this race.
And remember, too, they have a huge lead over the third-place car of Adrian Fernandez. He's back in third, fully a lap and change back. This is a two-way race.
And fuel is very definitely going to determine it. But if fuel is a problem for both of them, boy, that throws the door open. Benny Parsons was up here yesterday to cover some racing with us, the International Race of Champions. Said he was going to watch this from the couch today, and what he may be seeing is that good old NASCAR tactic at the finish, where Scott Pruitt just kind of hangs in there, and tries to run down one side or the other at the finish. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Well, let's get the story now on Team Penske and their strategy. We can't get a definitive number like we got from the Patrick team, as we see a picture now of Danny Sullivan going by helicopter to Foot Hospital in Jackson, Michigan. They'll take him in for further observation, as we indicated. Now, with Roger Penske in the camp down here, they say, yes, it is going to be tight on fuel, but the radio we're monitoring indicates to Junior that fuel is okay. It may be a bigger concern is the wear that we talked about earlier on the tires. Remember, Firestone right front, Goodyear right rear. Will that come into play? How much do you have to save those tires with now just under 30 laps to go?
And the leaders come up on Jacques Villeneuve, who just moved into 12th position. That's worth 1 point. He needs more than one.
And believe it or not, Villeneuve was helping Little Al, not hurting him. He needs the tow that he can get. Now, another thing, keep in mind, so everybody should know, both of these cars, Little Al and Pruitt, both have telemetry, that means that they're on-car computer transmits to the pits. The engineers are sitting there figuring out their mileage every lap that they go around.
So the battle continues. When we come back, it'll be a run to the finish. We'll take you all the way to the checker. Nothing has changed at the Michigan 500. Scott Pruitt remains on station behind Al Unser Jr. Best guess, Bobby and Sam, is that he wants to stay there. He wants to stay in the tow, and he'd like to save fuel by doing so. My question then becomes, as they begin to overhaul slower traffic ahead, that's DeFerrin and Fittipaldi. My question is there a concern on how much air ends up in the coolers of the second car, in this case Scott Pruitt's car, when you're in the draft like that? Do you have to get them out into clean air?
No, not really. What he's doing is really smart. When you've got that much distance behind, like Scott is from Little Al, you're picking up a fair good draft because they're running 250 miles an hour down the straightaways approximately. So he's getting a good draft but not hurting the radiators.
Identical speeds the last lap. Danny Sullivan is conscious, being transported to Foot Hospital and being checked for a possible fracture to the pelvis. He is alert, awake, and otherwise appears to be okay. And what about Lynn St. James, Gary Gerald?
Well, here she is, and I know disappointed, but we're happy you're healthy. Tell us what happened now. Just the case of an engine letting go?
No, I think actually a right front tire probably went. I don't know for sure, but I called in and said I had corner entry push for the first time. I hadn't had that. I'd had corner exit and apex push, but that was the first time I had an indication of that. And the tire held going into the corner, but then it just let go. I mean, something let go because all of a sudden the car just was a missile. And unfortunately, I had a long time to have to wait and see him pull Danny out, but I think he's going to be okay. And it's just another disappointing, you know, we were really running well. The race was coming to us. We were getting better with the setup on the car, and I was learning a lot, and we were hoping to have a good finish.
Scott Pruitt makes a move now as Al Unser Jr. runs slow and appears to slow and heads for the pits. Tactics, is that what we're looking at?
Little Al, no tactics there. Little Al has a problem. Very definitely has a problem.
So the Penske team goes to work on the car. Look at the right rear.
Tire.
Look at that. Blisters on the right rear. Scott Pruitt takes the lead of the race. 230 laps complete, 20 to go. Al Unser Jr. back into the fight.
And still in second place with Fernandez still third, I assume.
So now what does Jim McGee tell Scott Pruitt? Lean that thing out or go ahead and richen it up?
No, he's going to...
Sorry, Bobby.
He's definitely got to tell him to go easy now. Not stop, but just go easy. He has no competition left. Adrian Fernandez is down.
Hey, we'll find out. We'll find out. Jim McGee, what do you tell Scott Pruitt now?
Bring it home.
Got your answer for you guys.
Oh, yeah, that was a clarifying answer.
Yeah, really, I know a lot more now.
Bring it home means be careful. Don't make any stupid mistakes now.
Remember, Jim McGee was Nigel Mansell's crew chief in that great year Nigel had when he won the championship coming right off his World Championship. And so he is the voice of experience in this kind of stuff. And I'm sure when Scott Pruitt hears a word from Jim McGee, he listens.
Now Scott's got the responsibility of really using his head. They won't run the engine lean. Won't take any chance he doesn't have to because he really doesn't have any problems as far as competition right now.
Right now he has a full 30-second lead over second place Al Unser Jr. But remember how fast that happened to Al Unser Jr. Could the same happen here, Gary?
Well, here's a visual look. If we can get the shot, the tires are being wheeled back, and you can clearly see that strip of blisters from the rear tire. That's been the concern today. Right front Firestone, right rear, or Goodyear. They've been adjusting air pressures, and somehow this set did not come up to function under that setup, and great disappointment, obviously, for Junior.
And there's just the kind of thing that Scott Pruitt's going to have to be careful of. Christian Fittipaldi coming up on the inside as Scott overhauled Stefan Johansson.
You know, Scott can, if he blistered that right front that you see right now in his car, he could live with that a whole lot easier than little Al could live with the right rear being blistered. If your rear being blistered, that means that it's loose. That means he had a loose rear end. That's the one part that you can't live with.
Make no mistake, this is the high point of Scott Pruitt's whole career, a difficult career at best. Badly injured back in 1990, fought back from that, finally made his way back into Indy cars, but had a bad couple of years. Then this opportunity opened up. Began the season so successfully, then mid-season frustration. This could put all that behind him. This is the greatest moment so far of his career if he can keep it together.
Nobody else in contact, no other battles on the race course. Christian Fittipaldi running down there low behind Scott is in 10th place. 25-second lead over second place Al Unser Jr.
See, he could sacrifice a lot of time. There's only 15 laps to go. He could almost sacrifice 2 seconds a lap and still make it. So he's definitely going to be in the highest gear. Look at Fittipaldi coming by Christian. Now you know darn good well he's not trying very hard.
Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, one of the great things when you're at the controls of a race car, you've got a lot to concentrate on. But these guys here, their work is done. Right now, butterflies have become bullets in their bellies because they can't do anything to win or lose this race right now. It's all up to their driver, Scott Pruitt. And many of the crewmen on Pat Patrick's team are very much alone with their thoughts right now.
Nice and easy, Scott. Nice and easy. We're in good shape. Take it nice and easy.
There's another unseen team that's sitting there tensely, which is the Firestone team, waiting to break that long Goodyear streak should Pruitt manage to bring this one home.
Yellow, yellow,
Yellow.
yellow.
Car into the wall and into the wall big time. Zampedri. And DeFerrin locks him up to get past it, but Zampedri throws the steering wheel out, so apparently he's okay. The question now is going to be how long will it take to make repairs? And what it does do is closes up the 23-second gap between Scott Pruitt and Al Unser Jr.
Fuel ceases to be an issue.
Now this is going to raise the price of poker.
Trying to listen to the two-way radios.
This is going to be a shootout. Now, when it does go green, if they get this cleaned up, which they'll try very hard in the 12 laps that are in.
You can probably get a good idea. It didn't look like I ran through anything. I went right down to the inside of the track, got her load. It looks pretty good.
It's, you know, this time by, it's going to be about 11 laps to go. Junior's going to come around, so he's going to be in the back of the field. But we're in pretty good shape here.
So, while the caution is out, we'll leave for just a moment, and we'll be back. Back at the Michigan 500, under this caution for Alessandro Zampedri, they have a lot of debris up on the racetrack. Gil DeFerrin is into the pits. Christian Fittipaldi came in with a shredded right rear, may have run over some debris there. There is Scott Pruitt. Now 1, 2, you count the cars back to Al Unser Jr. 3
was, of course, Villeneuve.
4, 5, look at the distance, 6, that's Emerson, 7, well now 6, and they're not yet. So that of course is Teo.
Teo, yeah.
So Al Unser Jr.
Eight cars between them.
We're looking for him. There he is. There he is.
Yeah, but we know that could be made up in a moment if he gets a break.
Let's go to the pits. Begin with Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, in the leaders' pits, here's the wisdom that they're passing on to us. As soon as they heard that Al Jr. had gone out of the race, what they did is they radioed into Scott Pruitt, go to 6th gear. That's that overdrive gear, Bobby, that you've been talking about all day. Now they feel they've got plenty of fuel to go the distance, and if they have to, they can run their full speed gear for the remainder of this race when it goes back to green. What about at your end, Gare?
Well, Jack, in this situation here, the big discussion as the yellow came out, they were trying to make a decision as to whether or not Junior was going to come in and get a different set of tires and that they would tinker with the air pressure a little bit to impact the handling characteristics of the car. Of course, the great disappointment of that blistered right rear cost them the position on the racetrack. They made the decision and changed their mind, changed it again. They finally elected to keep him out, and as you gentlemen counted, 8 spots between where Junior is and the leader, Scott Pruitt. Awful lot to make up in very little time.
Well, let's give you a full field rundown. 10 laps to go. The leader is Scott Pruitt under the yellow. One of the things that is also interesting to me as we look at that full field rundown, Bobby, is that we know that...
Try and get him cleaned up and give us another reading. You know, lay back from the pace car a little bit.
we know that from the Penske team, Rick Mears and Clive Hall have been watching from up on top of the grandstand, so they can tell Little Al what lies ahead. I don't think Scott Pruitt has a spotter up here.
Well, it really isn't going to affect or help anything right now. Having a spotter up there is always nice. There's the little stand that the spotter's at, which is right alongside of us up here, best seats in the house. But it won't make any difference now. Little Al, unfortunately, has 8 guys to go by. He'll probably get by those 8 guys with Adrian Fernandez in the pits getting tires, probably had a puncture. Get Rick Gallus's car. But it won't make any difference because he just doesn't have enough time unless Scott misses a gear shift, has a flat tire. That's what everybody's worried about right now. It's like Adrian, he might have had a puncture there. They're all worried about going through the wrecks because the carbon fiber, which is the body, is just like glass that cuts tires.
All right, let's pay attention again to Scott Pruitt and his two-way communications.
He's just working his car back and forth now, feeling to make sure he doesn't have a tire going down. See, the driver can't see the rear tires. He can see them in his mirror, but they don't look like much. So he's feeling it right now to make sure he doesn't have a slow leaker like a little pinhole.
Let's go to Jack.
Well, you don't think Team Penske's feeling the heat? You see the crew member walking away down here, all the way down, did a sprint all the way up towards the front of the field to the cars that are between Al Unser Jr. and Scott Pruitt, and began to lobby, and we don't know whether effectively or not, if they would move over and let Al Jr. go to the front and try and race for the lead. Don't know how the lobbying turned out.
Yeah, you figure you have to take a chance, though. You have to try and argue it.
Yes, that's for sure. You know, there's plenty of room to pass it, like as we've said all day. The problem is he needs a certain groove to attain the speed he needs
Yeah,
to
it's going
catch
through that
Scott.
oil that's across the front straight.
Notice how calm
Pretty
Pruitt.
good now.
Pruitt sounds calm, almost laconic to me in view of the few moments
okay now.
that separate him from
We got 8 laps to go.
the high point, the culmination of his racing career.
The big worry right now, the way I see it, is going to be whether or not either one of them, or either one of the 3, including Adrian Fernandez and the Gallus car that's running 3rd, we got to keep track of him too. But if these guys have a flat or miss a gear shift, do something like that we would call stupid at the start, that would be bad.
But it could happen easily. If Pruitt, Bobby, you're so right, missed a gear shift on the restart, which I doubt he'll do, he could suddenly find himself in mid-pack.
You can hear how cool he is, though. This Pruitt doesn't get rattled. He came up through go-kart racing. This guy's been around a long time.
He's the defending Trans Am champion. In his year off from IndyCar racing, he just went and won the Trans Am.
Probably 3 more laps of yellow, Jackaroo.
Paul, we're talking about where the spotters are. You talked about Clive Hall and Rick Mears being up in the best seat in the house. Found out where Scott Pruitt's spotters are. See, way up there at the end of the grandstands, they say 5 rows down. They bought a ticket.
Cart can't stop him.
Their car owner doesn't own the speedway.
Cart can't stop him from doing that, that's for sure.
Let's go to Gary.
Well, as the countdown continues, looking for green, one of the busiest guys from the Penske camp is Peter Twitty, who's running from team to team trying to find out whether or not they can get cooperation so Junior can pick up some ground. And among those that they're lobbying, teammate Emerson Fittipaldi. And I mean, Twitty has just been back and forth, and then back and forth again.
We know that Twitty could be a heck of a salesman now, don't we?
I said, have you had any luck? And he says, I've got lots of luck. Right now he's talking to Chuck Sprague, who's on the radio with Emerson's team.
Still pretty dirty up there in turn 4. Quite a bit to clean up.
Well, the teams, I think all of them were relieved to see that Penske, who's not the dominant force this year that he had been in the last few years, it's really broken this season open, made it the best season for IndyCar racing in a long time. But they want everybody to have a fair shake. And when you know a man wants to work his way through the pack, you at least want to know he's there and see if you can give him a chance.
Al Unser Jr. pulls up, wants to make sure Teo Fabi knows exactly what he intends when they go to the restart. They're still trying to get a cleanup there. They've picked up all the little pieces, and believe me, there were a bunch.
And they have to clean it up. They have to be fair to everybody. That would be an unsafe circumstance to start it now.
Like a lot of those guys are just going to let them go on the restart, so we're going to have to be on our toes.
Boy, yeah, that's the news, all right.
That's Jim
McGee.
Pruitt. It's serious back there. Pete Twitty's been out selling.
And McGee knows it. That's the point. He's
Yeah, but
done
now
his
does
work.
McGee send somebody down the pits?
To lobby the other way?
No,
And he doesn't have the chip either. But here's McGee. because there's a Firestone Goodyear chip here too. And
remember, McGee used to run Penske Racing. He used to be the general manager over there.
McGee is you're probably looking at the face of the most experienced crew chief in this business, wouldn't you say, Bobby?
Well, when you combine the teams up, what incredible experience. Patrick Racing, Penske Racing.
He's the modern day George Bignotti. There's no question about that. Jim McGee has the most experience of anybody here.
We've jumped back about 5 years in time, 5 or 6 years in time.
Let's look up.
Okay, it's going to be green next time by. You can go to 12 o'clock now in 5th gear.
Yep, there's the finger. One more lap to go.
5th gear, so they know
green.
That's the go gear. 5th is.
And I think
Junior's only 1, 2, 3, 4 cars behind.
And
right on your bus.
And I think we can assume the 12 setting is the maximum power setting as well. Whatever the signals may be, we now know that.
Sam, did you hear him say he's on your button and go, shoo?
Yeah.
Full rich. All the power you can use. 6 laps to go, Gary Gerould.
5 laps to go.
Very critical it's going to be the start. How much of a jump that Pruitt gets.
Gary?
The lobbying paid off because Emerson Fittipaldi just came in and got a splash of fuel. That means, of course, that his teammate Alan Sir Jr. moves up at least 1 spot.
Oh.
That closes the gap. 5 to go.
There he is on the left of the screen. That's how close they are. They are real close.
So we're going to have a sprint to the finish. Of course, we're running close to our time limit here. We're going to get the end of the race for you. Don't worry about that. What we may miss is an interview with Scott Pruitt on his first IndyCar win.
He has taken that big jump. I knew he'd have to. And he gets the green.
All right.
That's
now,
decisive.
The game is Al Unser Jr. He runs high. Christian Fittipaldi overhauls Teo Fabi low. Little Al stays high. So that's 1 car.
There's Rahal right in front of Little Al. Rahal.
Got a signal from Rahal. Come to my inside.
Scott's still a long ways in front.
2.5 seconds.
That was the last crossing line. We'll find them now.
That draft right there is really helping Little Al. It's not hurting him right there.
Get behind you now. The next car behind you.
And now he is. Let Jim McGee do the play-by-play.
But in fact, Little Al may have enjoyed an advantage slipstreaming or drafting the other cars that he won't have now.
Laps to go.
Gonna be difficult.
Last lap Pruitt, 229 miles an hour. Last lap Unser Jr., 228.4.
Gap down to half a second.
Little Al's got a big draft now. He's got a really good one.
Pruitt is a very defensive driver.
Little Al tries to the outside as the white flag comes out. Side by side through the first turn. Little Al takes the advantage running high and comes into the lead. Less than 2 miles to go now in this 500-mile run, and Al Unser Jr. picks the lead up again. But what about Scott? He's going to chase Al everywhere he can.
He's got the draft now.
So Scott Pruitt may have the advantage coming to the final turns. Did he move too quick? Did he move too soon?
He's still
they
got
continue side by side. Al Unser Jr. and Scott Pruitt come to the line, and Pruitt's got him. Scott Pruitt takes the win.
One of the best races I've seen.
Scott Pruitt scores his first IndyCar win, the 36th for his owner, Pat Patrick, and the 3rd Michigan 500 win.
Fabulous race.
So there it is. There was the finish of the race. Scott Pruitt timed it absolutely perfect. For a moment, I thought he'd gone just a little bit too early, but not so. Perfect timing. And Scott Pruitt takes the win by inches here in the Michigan 500. Here's Jack Arute.
Well, Jim McGee trying to make his way over to victory lane, and he is so excited. Jim, congratulations.
Oh, thanks a lot. That was a great race. I mean, Scott's, he's got a lot of spunk, and after all he's been through in his racing career, it's absolutely incredible. I'm so proud and happy for him, and he's a true champ.
Let's go back up to you.
So Scott Pruitt, Scooter, has taken his first win in the Michigan 500. We'll see you next Saturday at the Brickyard 400.